Chapter 1637. Yang Ruolan would chat with Meng Qiaoran almost every day. She would ask about Meng Qiaoran's situation over the years. The frequency of this situation made Chu Feiling very jealous. If not for his absolute trust in his wife, he might have other thoughts. It seemed that Meng Qiaoran's appearance was quite outstanding. Mistress Yang asked all kinds of questions. For example, how did she pick him up from the swaddling clothes? How did he take care of him when he was 3 or 4 years old? What did he look like when he was 1 year old? What did he look like when he was 2 years old? What clothes did he wear? What did he usually? What was his favorite food? What was his least favorite food? There was nothing that he particularly disliked. How did he start practicing martial arts? When did he fall for the first time? Did he cry after falling? Did he have new clothes to wear during the new year? Did he have any toys when he was young? What did he like to play? And so on and so forth. Poor Meng Qiaoran was a big man. Even though he had experienced these things personally, how could he remember them clearly? Such a free and easy person was stuttering and sweating under Yang Ruolan's questions. It's been too long and you can't remember? It's okay. Think slowly. Think again? Think again. Don't be anxious. Think again. You really can't remember? It's okay. Let's change to another question. Think about it carefully, think again, think about it carefully. Yang Ruolan was full of interest. She listened 100 times and asked 100 times without getting tired. Poor Meng Qiaoran had already grabbed the things that he could remember and repeated them at least 100 times. Yang Ruolan listened with great interest every time. She would start to wipe her tears whenever she was disrespectful. Even a person like Meng Qiaoran began to cry out in his heart. He was just short of shouting for help. It's understandable if you shed tears every time you talk about something. But you would still cry after 100 times. This was too unbearable. What was this called? Especially when I was living in your house as a guest. You were chatting with me, and then you started to cry. How can I explain this? It was really embarrassing. Later on, Meng Qiaoran would run as far as he could whenever he saw Yang Ruolan. If Yi Chuchen wasn't here and couldn't move, Meng Qiaoran almost wanted to run away from home and wander the world. It was too awkward. This time, Meng Qiaoran was an indispensable person to discuss this matter with. Master Meng, about this matter? Chu Feiling asked Meng Qiaoran politely. Meng Qiaoran heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that it wasn't Yang Ruolan who had asked him this question. Recovering his usual indifference, he said, It doesn't matter. Let them do as they please. We, especially the Chu clan, don't get involved. Chu Feiling was startled. This is the extraterrestrial demon exterminating the world. Perhaps the end of the world is coming. How can Meng Qiaoran speak of it so casually? Wasn't he a little too calm? For a moment, Father Chu couldn't help but admire his son's master. Look at his magnanimity. This calmness. Only such a person could have taught such a monstrous talent like my son. Just by looking at the disciple, one would know the master. It has been like this since ancient times. The ancients did not deceive me. It's just that I haven't found Seniors Feng and Yu, so I don't know where they are now. I don't know if Master Meng. Chu Feiling was a little worried about this. He was afraid that it would delay his son's matters. After all, Senior Feng and Yu were peak experts in the world. If they were to help him, it would undoubtedly be a great help. You can rest assured about this. The two of them have left long ago. According to my estimation, it's very likely that they have already left the southeast region. At most, they'll be a day's journey away from the capital. Meng Qiaoran said lightly, a few days ago, news of the extraterrestrial demon came and they couldn't sit still. This time, they definitely went out secretly because of this matter. With them and Chu Yang's brother's strength, I believe that the big clans won't sit idly by. In this way, other than the law enforcement officers, all the strongest forces under the heavens have already joined forces. I believe that they will be able to deal with this extraterrestrial demon extermination. Don't worry, nothing will happen. Meng Qiaoran concluded. His tone was very certain. Chu Feiling and Yang Ruolan were slightly relieved. But Meng Qiaoran's next sentence made them want to strangle him. Speaking of which, if the strongest forces under the heavens are also defeated, then it'll be the end of the world. Everyone is doomed to die together. There's no point in worrying. Meng Chaoran said lightly, "That's all." Yang Ruolan and Chu Feiling were stunned. Meng Chaoran's first sentence was that he was in heaven and had unlimited imagination, as if he was already preparing a celebratory banquet for his son's triumphant return. But the second sentence was that he had directly fallen into hell. There were even 18 levels of hell, the end of the world, and everyone was doomed. Just when they wanted to catch this guy and denounce him, they saw that Meng Chaoran had already walked out lightly, leisurely, and confidently. His bearing was extremely calm. It's better to let the Chu clan make some preparations. Chu Feiling made up his mind and walked out immediately. How can the clan that the Tribulation Sword Master came from not make some gestures? Even if it's a drop in the bucket, they should show some attitude. On a road leading to the capital, there were two people in snow-white clothes. They walked at a leisurely pace, their speed seeming to be slow but was actually very fast. The man was handsome and the woman was beautiful. They were Yu Lingxue and Feng Yuro, who deterred the world. This trip to the southeast to fight the Omen can be said to be the most dangerous battle in our lives. Are you prepared? Of course. But my only regret is that I didn't leave behind half of my daughter for you. If anything happens, even if you and I can accompany each other in the afterlife, the Feng clan's descendants will be cut off. I'm really sorry for the ancestors of the Feng clan. The silly words. You and I are of one mind, swearing to eliminate the Omen. We have a clear conscience. If the Omen is not eliminated, how can everyone have a future? What descendants are you talking about? Yu Lingxue smiled lightly. Facing the Omen, we can fight it. If the Omen is not eliminated, then everyone will die. That's all. That's right. Facing the Omen with one mind, we can fight it. That's all. The couple smiled at each other and sped up their pace. Their white clothes fluttered in the wind and they quickly disappeared in front of the ancient road. At the moment, in the capital. As the Tribulation brothers made a big fuss, it became more and more lively. Slowly, people from the big clans also started to participate. These big clans who were originally irreconcilable enemies with the Tribulation Sword Master were now desperately helping Tribulation to create momentum. Because everyone knew that even if Tribulation destroyed their clans in the future, the leaders might not be able to survive, but most of the people under them would be fine, especially the innocent women and children. The Tribulation Sword Master would never kill indiscriminately. On the other hand, if the Omen succeeded, no matter if it was the innocent women and children, martial artists in the martial world, or even ordinary people, no one would be able to survive. The whole city was almost turned upside down. The power of public opinion was truly limitless. It was even more frightening and frightening. If one person said that the Dharma Supreme was the Omen, he would only be treated as crazy and might be beaten to death as soon as he said it. If 10 people said it, it was equally absurd and they would be beaten to death. Even if more than 100 people said it, the law enforcement officers would still fabricate a crime to silence them. However, if thousands, tens of thousands, or even hundreds of thousands of people said the same thing, then even if the people who heard it did not believe it, they would also think, why did they mention the Dharma Supreme instead of others? Since so many people said so, there must be a reason, or, as long as there was a guess, it would slowly become half believed and half doubted. At least, it would not be completely without suspicion. Those who had just entered the capital were still somewhat indignant, but slowly, they started to have doubts. The situation was slowly developing in a direction that was not favorable to the Dharma Supreme, and the trend was gradually expanding. The law enforcement officers in the city were completely powerless to stop such a crazy situation. They had long been suppressed to the point where they did not dare to show their faces. They could only hide, not daring to speak out despite their anger. At this time, if they still dared to say that the Dharma Supreme was not the Omen, even if they were not beaten to death, they would definitely be beaten to death. A wise man knows better than to fight when the odds are against him. Outside the city, this was an exceptionally quiet little village. The higher-ups of the law enforcement officers were all gathered here. At this moment, the eyes of these elites were emitting a cold black glow. Waves of dense demonic aura would occasionally surge from the surface of their bodies. In the innermost room, a few hoarse roars could be faintly heard from time to time. It seemed as if a few people were undergoing inhumane torture and torture. Their voices had already become unbearable to listen to. "Dharma Supreme, you damned beast!" An old voice was scolding weakly. "I have lived an upright life, a hero of my generation. Yet you led me into the path of the devil and became a seed of the devil." It was Ping Xiaoyun's voice. "You beast, you will definitely die a horrible death." Suddenly, there was a shrill scream, followed by an angry roar. "Let me die! Let me die! Why can't you even let me die? I would rather die than become a devil. Why can't I commit suicide?" But he obviously wanted to commit suicide, but he was controlled by the thoughts in his mind, and he could not even seek death. Feeling the demonic aura invading his body and soul, Ping Xiaoyun's face was full of tears. His heart was in so much pain that he wished he was dead. "My perseverance of a lifetime. My heroic reputation. I am a law enforcement officer. How can I become a devil? It can't be. Another heart-wrenching scream was heard. This was another law enforcement officer, a supreme martial artist, who was enduring endless torment in his heart, wandering between human and devil. The demonic will and the righteous will of the past were in a life-and-death struggle. One could vaguely see that the surging demonic will had already gained the upper hand. His spirit had already been devoured, and only his instincts were left. How long could a rootless water last? Chapter 1638. That person's eyes were as black as ink at one moment and as white as snow the next. His face was ferocious and his muscles were spasming as he struggled to maintain his last shred of clarity. However, it was obvious that they were having a hard time holding on and could collapse at any time. Once their last shred of clarity was gone, they would no longer be upright law enforcement officers but demons who wreaked havoc in the human world. There were hundreds of people inside and outside, all of them former colleagues who had fought together for a lifetime. How deep were their relationships? However, at this moment, it was as if no one had heard him and there was no reaction at all. There were also people whose eyes were shining with a cruel gleam of pleasure. The evil aura had completely affected their hearts, turning their hearts into cold iron stones. They were completely indifferent to the miserable state of their comrades who had fought side by side with them in the past. They were extremely cold and indifferent. A cold voice came from the treetops. "Shut up!" It was the Dharma Supreme's voice. In the thatched cottage, all the struggling and cursing suddenly disappeared. The demonic soul had long been devoured by the Dharma Supreme. As long as these people were not killed by accident, even if they wanted to die or commit suicide, they would have to get the Dharma Supreme's permission before they could do so. As long as the Dharma Supreme did not agree, he could continue to control their spirits and manipulate their actions. Even if they wanted to die, they could not. Once he told them to shut up, no matter how unwilling they were, they would have to obey the Dharma Supreme's orders involuntarily. Perhaps the word obey should not be used but obey. Having lost their spirits, they were just puppets to the Dharma Supreme. Ping Xiaoyun clenched his teeth tightly, tears streaming down his face. He slammed his head against the wall violently. Endless regret made him feel as if he was better off dead. If I had known, why would I have participated in that damn test? After giving up everything, he finally realized. When he gave up, he actually gave up on his soul and his conscience as well. He would be consigned to eternal damnation. The remaining bit of kindness in his heart, as well as the perseverance of 20,000 years, was still making its final struggle. However, he also knew that he couldn't struggle for much longer. At any moment, he would completely collapse and completely fall into the devil's path. On the treetops, two figures in black stood quietly at a high point. One had long hair fluttering in the wind. He was the Dharma Supreme. The other had a black cloth covering his head but was evil. He was the heavenly demon. Both of them spread out their divine senses. He checked the situation in the capital. Those people are all scolding you. Moreover, their ability to organize is quite strong. It seems to be very effective, the heavenly demon said in a gloating tone. The Dharma Supreme didn't say anything and just stood there like a statue. His face was expressionless. If their public opinion is really formed, it will be very disadvantageous for you. I didn't expect you to have such a high status in this trashy plane. To be able to cause such an impact. I really underestimated you back then. The heavenly demon continued. The Dharma Supreme remained silent. Don't you have anything to say? Could it be that he was at his wit's end? I don't know what to do. The heavenly demon looked at him, amused. How do you do it? The Dharma Supreme was silent for a moment before he said indifferently, it's nothing more than a huge massacre. Just kill them all. What's the point of wasting your breath on dead people? What do you want to say? Good. I like this method. The heavenly demon laughed loudly. The Dharma Supreme was silent, his gaze deep as he looked into the distance. The gaze in the eyes of the people who were already in a complete uproar slowly turned cold. As if he had made up his mind about something, he let out a low sigh. With his hands behind his back, he floated down from the tree. The Dharma Supreme's body was like a black feather. Floating in the air without any weight, he walked down step by step. His black robe fluttered in the wind, making it flutter in the air. It was eerie and terrifying, but at the same time, it was free and unrestrained. He murmured softly, "How many years? A flourishing time. Who really wanted to murder me? Do you remember, back then, love was extinguished. So much hatred turned into dust and sand. Go, go, go. Just let my heart betray this world." When he reached the last sentence, the Dharma Supreme's cold gaze suddenly showed a hint of fear. He looked into the distance somewhat blankly, a trace of memories flashing past his eyes, mixed with endless pain. However, the next moment, it was replaced by a cruel decisiveness, as if he had finally made up his mind to abandon the past and everything. He murmured, "Go, go, go. Just let my heart betray this world. So be it. So be it, betray this world." The Dharma Supreme let out a long howl, his long hair flying messily. At this moment he finally landed on the ground. In a flash he entered the room. Then there was a crisp slap, as if someone had slapped someone. The Dharma Supreme's cold voice said, "Ping Shaoyan, don't fail to appreciate my kindness." There was only silence in the room. There was also silence outside. Many people started to tremble. The Dharma Supreme walked out slowly and said indifferently, "Send 2 people to the city to clean up the rubbish. At this time, the city should be quieter. Your subordinate is willing to go." Approved. Remember, if it's tribulation and the tribulation sword master, kill without mercy. Use all your strength. If necessary, you may as well die together with the enemy. Yes. The 2 people, one tall and one short, stood out and cupped their fists. Then, they turned into a gust of wind and disappeared abruptly. Their cultivation was extraordinary. The heavenly demon stood behind the Dharma Supreme again and said, "Now, that place has become a whirlpool. Whoever goes there will die. You only sent 2 people there, are you sending them to their deaths? To die together with the enemy, even if you have the intention, you must have the ability to do so." The Dharma Supreme was silent for a moment. Then he said, "Send 2 second-grade supreme martial artists to test the strength of those people. I believe it will still be effective." Second-grade supreme martial artists to their deaths. What a big move. For this trash plane, it is indeed a big move. The heavenly demon laughed strangely. The Dharma Supreme smiled coldly and said indifferently, "If there are too many people, they will definitely choose to retreat and hide temporarily. At that time, we will still have to spend effort to find them. Only when there are not too many people can we test a certain level of strength. Right from the start, this is what I have been worried about. They are not big clans, but Tribulation, who has already become famous. If these 2 second-grade supreme martial artists can return in the end, then I can be completely at ease. If they can't return, then, the Tianding Grand Meeting 3 days later will have to be held by you personally. Only then will it be stable." The heavenly demon smacked his lips and said, "Since that is the case, why don't you try it yourself? Wouldn't that be safer?" The Dharma Supreme snorted with his hands behind his back. If I have to do everything personally, what is the use of having them? He said coldly, besides, after these people are demonized, what is the effect? There is still a need to test. And this time it is the test. Only when they are completely used by me, will I? The heavenly demon laughed strangely and said, your demonic seed is already very impressive. The Dharma Supreme narrowed his eyes and said, it is still lacking a lot of maturity, such as, the heavenly demon couldn't imagine that the young demon, who was already completely under his control, would have any other thoughts. Hearing the Dharma Supreme's question, he said disdainfully, I didn't expect you to not even know this? Listen so and so. I see. And what about that? Like this, watch and remember, yes, yes. Not bad, not bad. That's basically it. You have basically learned everything, the rest is just a process of familiarizing yourself with it. The heavenly demon smiled satisfactorily and said, in the future, you will definitely achieve extraordinary things, even if you reach my level. It is also not impossible, as long as you work hard enough. Everything is possible. The Dharma Supreme said solemnly, I hope so, I hope it is as you said, that everything is possible. But now, there is still one last problem that I don't understand, and that is the path of the heavenly demon, or the path of advancement. The heavenly demon laughed. Advancement is actually not difficult, you just need to do this, and you can gradually improve, step by step. Our cultivation is completely different from the bullshit cultivation of the human race. Yes? I really remember all of it. The Dharma Supreme smiled and said, my lord, how much of your demonic body has recovered? Do you need me to rein in some more soul power? The heavenly demon nodded in satisfaction. You are filial. My injuries have already recovered by about half, and my disrupted cultivation has also recovered to 10% of its peak. Although it's only 10%, it's still not something a middle-grade supreme martial artist can bear. If I had more soul power, I would be able to recover even faster. However, in this trashy plane, it's hard to find high-quality soul power, so I can only use quantity to supplement the quality. The Dharma Supreme nodded. I will go and collect the soul power now. The heavenly demon said, go, the two people who went earlier are already our demonic seeds. If they don't come back this time, there is no harm in absorbing their soul power. If I can devour the demonic seeds, I can recover faster. This time, don't neglect it. But, understood. The Dharma Supreme's eyes flashed and he left. Seeing that the Dharma Supreme had left, the heavenly demon revealed an extremely evil smile. Just as he was about to enter his room, he suddenly frowned and looked to his right. Letting out a cry of surprise, he transformed into a wisp of black smoke and leaped away. On the road about 100 miles to the right of this small village, there was a team that was advancing hurriedly. There were only a total of 7 people in this team. The leader had one big eye and one small eye, one eyebrow pointing to the sky and one eyebrow pointing to the ground, one ear pointing to the front and one ear sticking to the back. To have such a strange appearance, it was naturally only the Lord Tan Tan of the 3 Stars Divine Clan. The short and fat man beside Tan Tan was Gu Igu. The other 5 people were all elders of the 3 Stars Divine Clan. This time, Tan Tan didn't let Xie Danfeng accompany him. Heavenly demon destroying the world? There was actually such a thing? This news made the great demon King Tan very angry. In this world, other than me, who else is worthy of being called a demon? Now, some heavenly demon has actually popped out. This is totally fucking unreasonable. Chapter 1639. On top of that, this matter was related to senior brother Chu Yang. Therefore, during this period of time, Great Demon King Tan, who had already reached the peak of 2nd grade supreme martial artist, had set off for this place. While they were on the way, Tan Tan's gaze suddenly focused. He said, stop. Something doesn't seem right. Gu Igu stopped in his tracks. What do you mean? Before he could finish his sentence, extreme shock suddenly came over his face. Looking at the black aura that had suddenly appeared in front of them, he murmured, what pure demonic aura? Who's this? Could it be? Gu Igu's heart was beating rather fast. Could it be that he had just arrived at the capital and he had already met the person in question? It seemed like his luck was too bad, wasn't it? What a delicious delicacy. To think that it has delivered itself to my doorstep. A strange laugh came from the black aura. A salivating voice said, "Not bad, not bad. My luck is really not bad. To actually encounter a legendary supreme demonic body in such a trashy place. If I can eat this fellow, my cultivation will definitely be able to recover to its peak in an instant and even improve greatly. Meat pies falling from the sky are nothing more than that." The moment this voice came out, an unprecedented, sinister and terrifying pressure also spread out along with it. In an instant, it covered an area that covered the entire place. Tan Tan, Gu Igu and the others exchanged a look. They could all feel that this fellow's strength was really beyond their imagination. They really didn't expect that such a strong expert actually existed in this land of the heavens. Such strength was enough to make even the extraterrestrial demons sigh in admiration. This admiration had nothing to do with race. It was just a form of recognition of his cultivation. Tan Tan took a step forward. His eyebrows had long been knitted together. With his hands on his hips, he said, "Where did this evil demon come from? To actually dare to play tricks in front of me, the great demon king. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and come out to greet me, the great demon king." Tan Tan was used to calling himself the great demon king. Today, he had met a real demon. Yet he had raised his status by another level, from big to great. Upon hearing that, the heavenly demon let out a strange laugh. The ink-like black aura swirled and a black-robed man suddenly appeared in front of Tan Tan. His eyes narrowed, he licked his lips. He said, "Little, where are you from? How dare you call yourself the great demon king?" Tan Tan grinned and said, "Son, I'm your father." The heavenly demon flew into a rage and shouted angrily, "Bullshit. Although your devil body is quite suitable to be my father, I am not your son. There is the confusion of the demonic system here." Tan Tan angrily retorted, "You think it's suitable? Damn it. Are you insulting me? Do you think I want to be old?" The heavenly demon was stunned and immediately flew into a rage. "What did you say? You are clearly insulting me. Bastard." Demon King Tan flew into a rage. "But what kind of wet dream are you having? How dare you dream of becoming a handsome and elegant old man with such a disgusting appearance? You're fucking insulting me." The elders of the 3 Stars Divine Clan widened their eyes and opened their mouths. What was this called? These two fellows seemed to be so powerful that it made one's hair stand on end. However, the issue they were arguing about right now made one's hair stand on end. On Tan Tan's end, he had already erupted completely. "Gooey goo. Now give me a boost. Get rid of this fellow, so as not to be an eyesore." Gu Igu sighed inwardly. Damn it. The reputation of the older generation is in the hands of the great Saint King. It had already been completely ruined. Today's incident wouldn't make a difference. He walked out slowly. However, the heavenly demon opposite him was taken aback for a moment. Then he laughed, overjoyed. "An incredibly ugly short and fat fellow like you is actually called a drumigu? How exactly are you a drum? Why don't you show me a drum?" What annoyed Guigu the most was people making fun of his name. It couldn't be helped that Tan Tan made fun of him. Now, even this hideous fellow was making fun of him and even saying that he was incredibly ugly and short and fat. He flew into a rage at once. With a shake of his hands, more than 700 palm strikes rained down on him. "What does it have to do with you what I'm called? What does it have to do with you whether I'm short or fat? Who do you think you are?" Black aura flashed in the heavenly demon's eyes. Suddenly, countless arms reached out from the black aura and took on Gu Igu's attacks in a calm and composed manner. Slightly surprised, he said, "So you're a peak-grade supreme martial artist. Not bad. You can be considered an ant with some capabilities. Her. What a delicious meal. I'll play with you for a while." Extremely furious, Gu Igu moved. His powerful attacks, which were like a violent storm, were actually all blocked by him without any loopholes. Gu Igu couldn't help but be greatly alarmed. The torrential pear blossom palm, that he had used earlier was an ultimate technique that he had become famous for ever since he had made his debut. Although his attacks were a little out of order due to his fury just now, their might was even greater. He didn't expect the demon before him to be able to receive them so easily using such a method. This was something that had never happened before. Furthermore, not only did this person receive them so easily, he even created a very strange suction force that made his cultivation seem to be flowing outwards in an invisible manner. With a loud bang, the black aura suddenly dispersed. "You're the heavenly demon!" Gu Igu somersaulted out. Black aura appeared on his face as he exclaimed in shock. In actual fact, he didn't show any signs of defeat at the moment. However, he knew very well that if he were to really continue fighting, he would definitely be no match for him and his life would be in danger. The countenances of the people behind him all became unusually grim. It wasn't strange that the newcomer was a heavenly demon. They had already guessed this beforehand. However, the fact that a heavenly demon was actually this powerful was something that no one could imagine. "TSK? It's me." The heavenly demon smiled smugly. "Step back." Tan Tan's countenance turned solemn. He said, "I'll test him out." Although it was just this one exchange of blows, Tan Tan already had a judgment that none of them, including himself, was a match for this demon before him. However, victory or defeat would only be known after a fight. He'd rather be beaten to death than be scared to death by someone. To be honest, Tan Tan felt a sense of crisis in his heart right now. Ever since Tan Tan had awakened to his true self, he had never felt such a sense of crisis before. It was a feeling of not being able to completely control his own life and death. It was a very bad feeling. However, the pride and dignity of a king didn't allow him to retreat in the slightest. Besides, he still had too many trump cards in his hands. Tan Tan was also confident that even if he were to be defeated in the end, it wouldn't be too tragic. Besides, how could he not fight when faced with such a strong opponent? At the thought of this, Tan Tan was rather speechless. Although his current strength had already reached the peak, he actually still hadn't truly recovered to the peak state of his previous life. Otherwise, why would he feel so stifled? He would have gone to give that bullshit heavenly demon a good thrashing this morning. "Be careful, Saint King. You mustn't be careless," all the elders said in unison. Even Gu Igu wasn't a match for the other party. If the Saint King were to fight personally, the outcome was really not optimistic. When the heavenly demon saw that Tan Tan was going to fight personally, he clearly became excited. His entire body actually trembled a little. Black aura flickered in his eyes, and he was overjoyed. He chuckled and said, "All right, let me have a taste of this supreme demonic body of yours." Tan Tan let out a strange cry. His body had already turned into a strong gust of wind as he charged forward fiercely. He swung his fist and said, "Watch how I beat you up, you brat." The heavenly demon didn't dodge or evade. He took a step forward and similarly threw out a punch. Boom. The two fists collided head-on without any tricks. Chi-chi, dense black aura emerged from both fists at the same time. The heavenly demon's fists were overflowing with dense demonic aura that was pitch black like ink. On the other hand, the force on Tan Tan's fists was a kind of aura that was so black that it shone brightly. The heavenly demon's demonic aura was filled with an extremely evil aura. However, Tan Tan's black aura was completely dark. That was a kind of feeling that was even darker than the night. It was a darkness that seemed to want to engulf and shield everything. As the two fists clashed, the heavenly demon's body only swayed slightly before it immediately stopped. An expression of extreme surprise and astonishment actually appeared on its face. It was clearly an expression of joy that was beyond one's imagination. On the other hand, Tan Tan's entire body swayed and staggered for a full 30 feet. Then he reluctantly stopped his footsteps. The expression on his face had become exceptionally heavy, cautious, and solemn. The heavenly demon was confident in his cultivation. So, it could be said that he was confident in his victory in this fight. However, the purpose of his previous attack was to feel out Tan Tan's bottom line so that it would be convenient for him to take action later. After all, he didn't wish to obtain a broken and incomplete supreme demonic body. However, Tan Tan was also aware of his status. He wasn't willing to be at a disadvantage. So, he wanted to feel out the true limits of his opponent. Both of them had come to a conclusion after that punch. This guy possessed the supreme demonic body. However, it seemed that he hadn't unearthed the true mysteries of the supreme demonic body. So, he hadn't even displayed its true might. The heavenly demon's heart had settled down after he had obtained this confirmation. He looked at Tan Tan with an even stranger look in his eyes. In fact, he was faintly revealing an urge to possess Tan Tan's body. This guy's cultivation is indeed higher than mine. In fact, it's much higher than mine. But his devil energy is unexpectedly heterogeneous and impure. It's brimming with a kind of demonic and heterodox feeling. This is a flaw that I can take advantage of. My devil energy is much purer than his. So, it's almost meaningless to compare. However, it's the other way around in terms of quantity. I'm at a complete disadvantage in terms of comprehensive strength. So, my chances of victory are slim. Therefore, I can only slowly think of a backup plan. Tan Tan Xen had already thought of retreating. There was no other reason than that this opponent was too dreadful. He knew that he wouldn't have any chance of victory if he were to force himself into a fight. After all, he wasn't a match for him. The heavenly demon's cultivation was higher than Tan Tan's. So, he had obviously confirmed this earlier. Moreover, he had clearly understood Tan Tan's thoughts. So, how could he allow him to escape? Chapter 1640. When Tan Tan's thoughts reached this point, he saw that the heavenly demon had already flown right up to him. He immediately shouted, "Wait! I have something to say." The heavenly demon did as he said. Puzzled, he asked, "Oh, what do you have to say?" Tan Tan took 2 deep breaths to regulate his breathing. Then he said, "To be fair, you take 3 steps back first." The heavenly demon was puzzled. "Why?" Tan Tan said angrily, "Take it or leave it. Damn it, why is it so hard to talk to you?" The heavenly demon snorted. "I'll just take 3 steps back. What can you do?" Tan Tan took a deep breath. Suddenly, he puffed out his chest and shouted at the heavenly demon, "Hey!" His voice was like spring thunder, shocking the surroundings. Hearing that, the heavenly demon took another step back inexplicably. He said, He hadn't even finished speaking when he heard Tan Tan mustering his strength. It seemed as if he had exhausted all the strength in his body. Then he shouted hysterically, "Help me!" The heavenly demon was stunned. He couldn't believe his ears at all. Extremely astonished, he asked, "What did you say?" Why would Tan Tan care about what he said? But he kept calling out, "Ichi Ichi Ong, save me, Ichi Ichi Ong, save me? If you don't come, I'll be dead. Damn you!" The heavenly demon flew into a rage. "So you're asking for help? You're actually asking for help?" Tan Tan said furiously, "You fool! Can't you tell that I'm asking for help? When I encounter bad guys that I can't beat, I'm not allowed to shout for help. What kind of bullshit logic is this?" Then he opened his throat and let out another heart-wrenching howl. "Help, Ichi Ichi Ichich!" The heavenly demon flew into a rage. Demonic aura spread and engulfed the whole place. Tan Tan didn't retreat. Instead, he went up to meet him. Gu Igu and the others followed their hearts and joined the battle. In an instant, they were locked in a battle with the heavenly demon. Tan Tan's side was united. They joined forces to fight against the enemy. They were destined to have no chance of winning this battle. However, if they worked together, it was still possible to hold on for a period of time. Right now, they could only hope that before their joint forces were broken, someone would really come to their rescue. In the sky. "Save me!" This was a unique voice in the First Heaven continent, and it was also a unique and miserable cry. It spread out in all directions at high speed, and actually shook 1,000 miles. It was all in the city. In terms of their positions, Gu Duxing was the closest to Jianghu. Gu Duxing had been paying attention to the news from Jianghu's side during the propaganda, the killings, and the constant counterattack. After all, she was his future sister-in-law, especially since Jianghu was so young. And this was her first big battle experience. Even though Mo Qingwu's cultivation had already reached the peak, Gu Duxing still couldn't be completely at ease. In fact, Mo Qingwu was in the northeast position, while Gu Duxing was in the north. This was originally Chu Yang's arrangement. Gu Duxing wasn't a fool. He naturally understood the meaning behind Chu Yang's actions. As Tribulation's brothers, Gu Duxing was the first one that Chu Yang got to know. They got along with each other the longest and knew each other the best. Although Gu Duxing was the strongest among the brothers, even if Gu Duxing wasn't the strongest, in terms of a certain psychological perception, Chu Yang was the strongest. Chu Yang was also most at ease with Gu Duxing here. This wasn't to say that he couldn't be completely at ease with the other brothers here. It was to say that Chu Yang had a kind of preconceived notion in his heart. This had nothing to do with feelings. It was only related to first come, first served. This was the blind spot of human thinking. There was no reason to explain it. It could basically be said to be a kind of subconscious behavior. Just like now, some leaders in enterprises clearly had excellent horses but didn't use them. At some crucial moments, they would still use them to start their own businesses. Although the brothers back then knew that doing so might not be the right thing to do, they still did so subconsciously. Did you have a temper? Even if this ended up messing up the big plan. So what? This paragraph doesn't count. Damn it, I'm excited. Hearing that Mo Qingwu's side had a smooth journey, Gu Duxing naturally felt relieved. And in the northwest, Dong Wuxiang was also advancing toward the center with a kind of momentum. In this way, the situation in the north, northeast, and northwest gradually stabilized. Gu Duxing's heart finally relaxed a little. Fighting all the way until now, the pressure could be said to be not great. Not only were there no particularly outstanding experts among the ordinary participants, even on the law enforcement officer's side, there weren't any outstanding experts. Even if there were a few ordinary supreme martial artist experts, they would be easily dealt with. It wasn't enough to affect the overall situation at all. Therefore, Gu Duxing finally heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed that the Dharma Supreme didn't intend to completely fall out with them at this time. This was basically in line with Chu Yang's estimation. The Dharma Supreme's target this time was the Tianding Grand Meeting. If there weren't any major changes, he wouldn't act rashly and lose the big picture for the small. If an all-out war were to be launched at this time, the law enforcement officers would have a high chance of winning. However, the Tianding Grand Meeting that they had painstakingly planned would definitely be ruined. Once the war broke out, it would be absolutely impossible for the Dharma Supreme and the heavenly demons to gather everyone like they did now. In that case, they wouldn't be able to absorb the soul power that they needed the most. It would take at least hundreds or even thousands of times more effort. How could the Dharma Supreme not see the drawbacks in this aspect? Seeing that the public opinion here had been completely stirred up, Gu Duxing decided to meet up with Mo Qingwu. Only when they really met up could they be completely at ease. It wouldn't be too late to talk about other things. After all, the big clans are also fully cooperating with us now. The target that Big Brother requested is also more or less completed. Gu Duxing let out a long howl and prepared to move closer to Mo Qingwu's side. Although they had been besieged and ambushed countless times, nothing happened in the end. There wasn't even a wound left on second old Master Gu's body. Even his clothes seemed to be very clean. It was really a little too easy to Beiduteba fragrant words. This was the benefit of having a high cultivation level. In the heart, the 8 of them were all chatting happily with Chu Yang. It seems like there's really no pressure here. Puma. Hee. There was no other person who could be so smug other than Ao Xian. This dragon was close to forgetting himself now. I've snatched a lot of things this time. What? I'm rich. This sentence couldn't help but make the brothers collectively despise him. Other than this miser Ao Xian, there really wasn't anyone else who would snatch things at this time. What kind of good treasures could a bunch of low-level martial artists have that could catch the eye of a supreme martial artist? Under normal circumstances, if a supreme martial artist told a low-level martial artist that he had taken a fancy to something, the low-level martial artist would definitely immediately give it to him and would even be eager to give it to him. It was an honor. After all, there were too few opportunities for low-level martial artists to have any relationship with a supreme martial artist. However, Ao Xian's situation was that of a supreme martial artist robbing low-level martial artists. It really didn't sound good if word got out. It wasn't an ordinary tasteless thing. I really despise. Rui Butong's voice rang out. Why am I with this guy? I really want to say that I don't know him. It's really too embarrassing, damn it, Ant Dog. GMO was elated. It's really fun. It's a pity that there aren't any experts to test it out. It's a pity, it's more or less a little strenuous on my side. Luo Kadi's voice obviously had a teasing tone. Well, I actually have emperor-level experts on my side. And there are quite a few of them. It's really strenuous. Everyone scolded in unison. This guy really dared to say that. Everything is normal on my side. There's no pressure. Xie Danqiong was still indifferent. There's no need to say more. The most important thing was for everyone to gather together. Long delays may lead to trouble. Dong Wushang said. Dong Wushang obviously had Mo by his side to remind him. Otherwise, with just Dong Wushang alone, it seemed that he really wouldn't be able to say such words that took the big picture into consideration. Everyone was naturally well aware of this point. They couldn't help but burst into laughter. Dong Wushang was so amused that he scratched his head. Was there a problem with his wife's words? There was no problem, right? There was really no problem. Conflicted, Chu Yang's voice rang out. Why isn't Qingwu saying anything? Did she meet someone difficult to deal with? Mo Qingwu's voice clearly carried sweetness. I'm fine. Everything is going smoothly. Chu Yang heaved a sigh of relief. After everyone has gathered, let's blossom and spread out. After we're done, we'll come back. For this operation, the Dharma Supreme will definitely need some time to receive the news. We've caught them off guard this time. We may not have such an opportunity in the future. It's still hard to say what will happen next. Understood. Everyone agreed together. Right at this moment, Gu Duxing clearly sensed two strong auras coming from the north. Before they arrived, their powerful auras were already like a hurricane passing by, heavily oppressing his heart. These two people were definitely not to be trifled with. Gu Duxing couldn't help but be startled. He immediately said, there are two experts from the north. They have a strong murderous aura. I'm afraid they're experts from the law enforcement officers. Everyone be careful. Mo Qingwu was the first to bear the brunt. She said, I've also sensed it. There's such a dangerous feeling. I believe the people from the north are of extremely high cultivation. They're probably not weaker than us. Everyone else agreed. These two people came aggressively and their murderous aura was even more undisguised. Everyone had already sensed it. On the other side, Chu Yang made a prompt decision. Everyone, gather together immediately. Be careful and be on guard. Safety is the first priority. Pay attention to see if it's an expert from the law enforcement officers. If it is, avoid them as soon as possible. If it isn't, join forces to kill them. All the brothers agreed, and quickly gathered around the central location like a meteor flashing by. From 8 directions, 8 figures streaked across the sky like shooting stars. The power of a second-grade supreme martial artist was truly revealed at this moment. In an instant, there was complete silence in the capital city. 8 second-grade supreme martial artists took action at the same time. Everyone's aura was fully released. Such power, even in the capital city, was definitely the first time it had happened. The people below couldn't help but look up at the figures flashing past above their heads. They couldn't help but be stunned. Tribulation. The tribulation of the Tribulation Sword Master. He had actually grown to such an unattainable realm. In several directions in the city, the experts from several big clans felt the power of the Tribulation Brothers. Their expressions were complicated and their eyes flickered. Many people sighed at the same time. Tribulation was based on grade. He could be considered to have achieved great success. It was just a matter of time before he dominated the world. The extraterrestrial demon here was already unrivaled. The tribulation over there was also fully fledged. What should they do? In the blink of an eye, 2 sharp and long howls broke through the air. Gu Duxing's eyes flashed. The black dragon sword let out a loud and clear howl. It rose up and turned into a black dragon with billowing smoke. It flew out of the sky and met them head-on. Dong Wuxiang stomped his feet and flew into the air with his saber. He changed direction and rushed toward the north. "Meet the enemy!" Two voices that sounded like metal and stone clashing said coldly, "Tribulation of the world? Die today." Chapter 1641. After a while, two figures suddenly appeared in the sky, as if they had materialized out of thin air. With the appearance of these two people, boundless pressure and majesty appeared. That was the confidence of the law enforcers for 10,000 years, a kind of awe-inspiring righteousness. But at this moment, this confidence transformed into a strange and domineering special aura. It made people feel extremely uncomfortable. The two of them stared down coldly with 4 pairs of eyes. The next moment, 2 black lights shot up into the sky, one on the left and one on the right, sweeping over. Clang, 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 clang. Below, countless long swords suddenly left their sheaths spontaneously, shining brightly. Countless people were shocked to see their swords leave their sheaths spontaneously, and a thought came to their minds. Then, they were completely shocked by this thought, and they blurted out, "Sword supremacy!" Almost at the same time, countless sabers also let out long cries and left their sheaths. They were almost half a foot long. This meant that besides the sword supremacy, there was also the saber supremacy. Facing the strong attack of the law enforcers, a saber and a sword supremacy faced it head-on. In mid-air, 4 powerful supreme martial artist auras clashed and collided with each other, gradually scattering in all directions. Rings of powerful auras continued to spread out in an unbridled manner. Down below, almost everyone was trembling because of the sudden powerful aura. Being suppressed by such an aura, everyone felt as if the end of the world had arrived. Perhaps at this moment, or perhaps at the next moment, they would die. "Are you here to kidnap people? Since you're here, why don't you report your name? Otherwise, you'll die without a name." A high-grade supreme martial artist shouted coldly, his words full of strong murderous intent. Gu Duxing smiled coldly and said, "For tens of thousands of years, the law enforcers have always been the most powerful helpers of the Tribulation Sword Master. Who would have thought that today, when the heavenly demon is wreaking havoc, you would be the first to jump out and rebel against the heavens? Are you willing to become the slaves of the heavenly demon so willingly?" The expression on the high-grade supreme martial artist's face didn't change at all, but the black gas in his eyes suddenly surged out. He said coldly, "I'm Ghost Sword Duan Tiansung. My sword has dominated the heavens, and I've never killed a nobody. I advise you to tell me your name. You don't mind walking without a name. I still care about the record of killing a tribulation, but I don't know which tribulation was killed." The other shorter one laughed strangely and said, "I am the demonic saber ancestor, he. I don't care if I know your names or not. You are just people who are about to die." At this moment, in the crowd below, there was a commotion. Some of the upper echelons of the aristocratic families were shocked. The newcomers were Ghost Sword Duan Tiansong and Demonic Saber Ancestor He. These two people were the top killers of the law enforcement officers. These two people had always been ruthless to their enemies. As long as it was an enemy of the law enforcement officers, they would never let them go. This was not the main point. The main point was that these two people had never been defeated. The two of them were already members of the Patriarch Hall among the law enforcement officers. Originally, it was only under Wind and Moon. The combined power of these two people was only slightly inferior to that of the Moon Breeze couple. All the experts in the world would turn pale at the mention of this name. Unexpectedly, it was fine if the Dharma Supreme didn't make a move. As soon as they made their move, they directly dispatched the 2 ace experts of the world law enforcement. For a moment, there was silence. The law enforcement experts under the Dharma Supreme, the fresh legend of tribulation under the Tribulation Sword Master. It was about to be the first head-on collision. Who would win and who would lose? The legend of tribulation could be rewritten, or even ended. Would the demonic calamity of the Dharma Supreme be eliminated or even annihilated? The only thing that was certain was that no matter the outcome, no matter who won or lost, This battle would be recorded in history. For the first time in 10,000 years, there was a situation where law enforcement experts faced tribulation head-on. For the first time, law enforcement experts and tribulation engaged in a life-and-death battle. This battle in the future announced the end of a great era, and at the same time, the arrival of a new era. No matter who won or lost, it would shake the world and shock the world. Gu Duxing sneered. Ghost sword and demonic saber? I haven't seen the ghost sword, but the name of demonic saber is now true. Is the heavenly demon's underling worthy of ruling the world and enforcing the martial world? Listen, I am Gu Duxing, one of the tribulations under Big Brother Tribulation Sword Master. Dong Wushang laughed. Demonic saber? What a coincidence, ha, the veteran's is the dark saber, but yours is the demonic saber. Today, I will let the world see how the demonic saber will break and how the dark saber will dominate the world. I am Dong Wushang, one of the tribulations under Big Brother Tribulation Sword Master Chu. How arrogant! Aren't you afraid that the wind will cut your tongue and break my demonic saber? After a while, the saber will be broken and people will die. Demonic saber master, he said coldly. When men kill people, they never rely on their mouths. Dong Wushang stood in the air. With a flip of his wrist, the dark saber appeared in his hand. He held the saber horizontally across his chest and pointed the tip of the saber forward. He shouted, Zhu He, come forward and accept your death. Zhu He looked up to the sky and let out a long and loud roar. The magic saber in his hand flashed, and he leaped up. Then he soared into the sky without any support. Dong Wushang laughed wildly and followed after him with a whoosh. Both of them hadn't made a move yet, but the surroundings were already filled with saber energy. With a flash of the black saber, Dong Wushang attacked first. Holding the saber in one hand, the dark saber, which had already reached 1,500 kilograms, came down. Zhu He's eyes flashed and he shouted, You want to rule the world with your saber? Ask my demonic saber first. The demonic saber was held horizontally in a head-on manner to block the attack. At this moment, Gu Duxing and Duan Tiansong didn't make a move. They just watched the fierce collision between Dong Wushang and Zhu He. This was because the first clash between the two of them was already enough to decide something. Therefore, both of them were fully focused on observing the outcome of this collision. Gu Duxing was full of confidence in Dong Wushang. Coincidentally, Duan Tiansong was also very confident in Zhu He. However, Gu Duxing's expression was focused and concerned. As for Duan Tiansong's expression, it was a mixture of excitement, cruelty, and indifference. Zhu He's attack could definitely test the depth of the opponent's foundation. Since the two of them were qualified to belong to the tribulations, their cultivation was naturally similar. His probing was equivalent to finding a path for himself, which was greatly beneficial to him. As for whether Zhu He was dead or alive, that was his own business. Losing his life to the enemy had nothing to do with others, and it had nothing to do with Duan Tiansong. The moment this thought arose, Duan Tiansong also felt surprised. He and Zhu He had worked together all their lives. Even if they didn't dare to say that their friendship was life or death, it was still a close friendship. He had never been so indifferent to Zhu He's safety. But why did he think so this time? But in the blink of an eye, another thought arose inexplicably. What could be more important than the great cause of the heavenly demon? The black aura around his body suddenly surged. Duan Tiansong immediately felt at ease and was no longer surprised. Gu Duxing's sharp eyes flashed. He looked at him with some surprise, but Duan Tiansong didn't care. The two sabers finally collided with each other. Both of them shook at the same time. Dong Wushang's burly body suddenly took a step back, and then took another step back. His body leaned back slightly and then he turned back. As for Zhu He, he flew out 100 feet like a kite with a broken string. The saber in his hand was still buzzing. His face suddenly turned pale, and then a burst of black aura surged. His hawk-like eyes stared at Dong Wushang, and he said with difficulty, "What a heavy saber." As soon as he said that, a trace of blood finally came out of the corner of his mouth. Dong Wushang sneered and said, "Is it very heavy?" I think it's just that your saber isn't heavy enough. When it came to cultivation, although they were all supreme martial artists and were roughly on par, Zhu He still had the upper hand in detail. After all, his foundation was much, much deeper than Dong Wuxiang's. It was all accumulated through his own cultivation. And Dong Wuxiang's current cultivation was mostly obtained through external forces. Even though he had already taken it all for his own use, there was still a gap between the degree of purity and the degree of utilization. But in a real fight, other than cultivation, there were several other factors that determined the outcome. In Dong Wuxiang's case, his advantage was his great strength and heavy saber. Dong Wuxiang was born with great strength. Coupled with his black saber, it was even more powerful. And although Zhu He's saber was also a heavy saber, it only weighed 135 kilograms. Dong Wuxiang's black saber originally weighed 570 kilograms. After being strengthened by Chu Yang when he was a second-grade supreme martial artist, it already weighed 1,500 kilograms. Not long ago, after breaking through to second-grade supreme martial artist, Dong Wuxiang pestered Chu Yang to strengthen the black saber again. At present, it already weighed a full 1,500 kilograms. Dong Wuxiang was very satisfied with this weight. A 1,500 kilogram saber, coupled with Dong Wuxiang's great strength, and the fact that they were fighting at a high altitude, the opponent's saber only weighed 135 kilograms. This gap was really too big. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was as big as heaven and earth. Caught off guard and unprepared, Zhu He could take this saber without dying or being crippled, and even the saber itself was intact. This result was already beyond Dong Wuxiang's expectations. Since you think it's heavy, let's take another saber. Have a good taste of Second Master Dong's prowess. Dong Wuxiang gave a loud shout and spun up. His body turned into a tornado as he spun and slashed at the ancestral river. Zhu He already knew their strengths and weaknesses. How would he dare to take it head-on? He dodged and took advantage of the momentum to counterattack with his saber. Dong Wuxiang turned his wrist and somersaulted in the air. His black saber clashed fiercely against the opponent's saber. Zhu He still did not dare to take it head-on and was forced to change his move again. Dong Wuxiang was still unchanging. I'll go how you come. We're on the same level. I'll use whatever moves you use. It'll be a head-on clash. And I'll have the advantage no matter what. Anyway, I'm strong and my saber is heavy. You're weak and your saber is light. You'll be at a disadvantage no matter what. Chapter 1642. Duan Tiansong's voice had become calm and peaceful. He no longer had the viciousness and craziness from before. Your sword intent is really strange. It makes me feel lonely and lonely. Duan Tiansong looked at Gu Duxing with a smile. Especially after the sword, I felt even more sad and lonely. He sighed sincerely. Good swordsmanship. Legend Tribulation certainly lives up to its name. Brother Tribulation is invincible. I've finally experienced it myself today. He was full of praise. Not only was he not angry, he was instead filled with some kind of relief. Gu Duxing was silent for a moment. Then he said, "You didn't use your full strength, especially in the last fight." Duan Tiansong shook his head. It's not that I didn't want to, but I really couldn't. Although the demonic aura can increase the power of martial techniques, I've had too little contact with it after all. I haven't completely integrated it into my 10,000 years of habits. So, I definitely didn't show mercy just now. In fact, even if I wanted to, I couldn't do it. He laughed bitterly. Because at that time, I still couldn't control myself. Then why are you now? Gu Duxing asked with some surprise. He was surprised at the enemy's change. Why did it seem like he was completely demonic? Because I'm already dead. Duan Tiansong smiled calmly. Nothing matters in life except death. I, Duan Tiansong, finally understand the true meaning of this sentence today. Once you've seen through life and death, what's there to be afraid of? So now he can't control me anymore. I'm finally me again. I'm no longer a demonic puppet. He looked at the battle between Dong Wuxiang and Zhu He in a daze. He laughed self-deprecatingly and said, In the past, I always said that death isn't scary. But for those who are truly alive, there's no one who can see through the word death. Since ancient times, the only difficult thing is death. It turns out that death is ultimately so difficult. He looked at Gu Duxing calmly and said, Gu Duxing, your swordsmanship has already reached a higher level and is about to reach the peak. You've already gone further than me. Before I die, I have nothing to tell you because you've already surpassed me. However, I still want to tell you something. It was a sentence about martial arts. It's also the only realization I have after death. Gu Duxing said seriously, please enlighten me. After a moment of silence, Duan Tiansong finally said word by word, life and death. The mortal battlefield is the best place for you to go. After seeing through death, one's swordsmanship should be able to achieve small accomplishment. Then, if one were to see through life, one would be able to achieve great accomplishment. Everyone could talk about this principle, but it was difficult to achieve it. I've never been able to see through it. Even now, I still haven't been able to see through death. Even in death, I still haven't been able to see through it, because death is, after all, an external force and not one's own state of mind. Remember, life and death. It was a kind of realm. It's not just about living or dying. Duan Tiansong said softly. Gu Duxing murmured in a low voice, life and death are a kind of realm. It's not as simple as living or dying. After pondering for a long time, he said, I'll remember it. I don't really understand it yet, but I'm going to try and explore. Thank you for your advice. You're welcome. Duan Tiansong let out a long sigh. In the future, when you see people like us, I will ask you for one thing on their behalf. Gu Duxing said respectfully, please speak. As fast as you can. Kill them. Duan Tiansong smiled warmly. The faster you die, the more likely you will be able to preserve your reputation. You know what I mean. Gu Duxing nodded slowly. I'll remember it. If it's possible, I'll do my best. Duan Tiansong nodded and smiled. He stood in the air with his hands behind his back, watching the battle between Dong Wuxiang and Zhu Hehe. He said dispassionately, I'll wait for my brother. With a companion in the netherworld, I won't be alone. We brothers have walked together for 10,000 years, never abandoning each other in life and death. But at the last moment, we almost broke that spirit of brotherhood. This is what I should thank you for the most. That sword of yours gave me this last moment of clarity. On the other side, Dong Wuxiang had obviously gained an overwhelming advantage. He forced Zhu Hehe to clash head-on with his saber strike after strike. With every strike, both of them would spit out blood at the same time. It was an extremely barbaric fight. It was a head-on collision. There were no tricks involved in the fight. At this moment, both of them were clearly enraged. Their eyes were red, and there was no need for dodging at all. They could only clash head-on. The empty space was shattered piece by piece. The next moment, it was reassembled, and the next moment, it was shattered again. The cycle was endless. The place where the two of them fought was already thousands of feet high in the air. Below the place where they fought, the whole place was shaking. The two of them shook violently, causing their bodies to sway. After such a battle, Zhu Hehe's side has recovered a little bit of his sanity. Duan Tiansong was relieved. Otherwise, he wouldn't have chosen such a suicidal way of fighting. If he really fought in a clear-headed state, your companion's strength is too great. He was born a hero, so he neglected techniques. So even if he could win in the end, he would still have to pay a considerable price. His fighting style is too simple, so simple that it's regrettable. Gu Duxing nodded seriously. I'll pass on your words to Dong Wuxiang seriously. Duan Tiansong nodded with a smile. Finally, Dong Wuxiang let out a fierce roar. Holding the saber with both his hands, which had already split open, he slashed at Zhu Hehe, dripping with blood. What a powerful and domineering slash. That was a slash, and also a slash that cut through everything. Zhu Hehe's demonic saber could no longer bear it and shattered in an instant. The demonic saber, which was already riddled with holes and fragmented from the continuous collisions, finally couldn't bear the strongest and fiercest impact. Before the final collision even hit, it had already shattered completely. Dong Wuxiang's dark saber was like lightning and thunder, slashing wildly at Zhu Hehe. Zhu Hehe's twisted face suddenly revealed a peaceful smile. He actually stood with his hands clasped behind his back, facing Dong Wuxiang's saber without dodging. His face was calm. "Stop!" Duan Tiansong shouted. "Stop!" Gu Duxing shouted to stop him. Dong Wuxiang was shocked when he heard that. He pulled back his saber with all his strength. However, the saber energy that had left the saber couldn't be stopped. The biting cold saber energy had already passed through Zhu Hehe's body. Zhu Hehe's expression gradually calmed down. He maintained his unmoving figure. He could clearly feel the sharp saber energy cutting through his heart meridians. The expression on his face finally changed again. The originally calm expression became more and more relaxed. There was even a kind of carefree feeling of waking up from a nightmare and finally being free. Zhu Hehe, who had finally broken free from the demonic shackles and was about to die, no longer looked at Dong Wuxiang. Instead, he turned around and floated toward Duan Tiansong, who was in the air. The people below were all surprised and puzzled. What was the result of this battle? It looked like Tribulation's side had won a complete victory. But why did the victors, Dong Wuxiang and Gu Duxing, look a little sad, while the two losers, Duan Tiansong and Zhu Hehe, look a little happy? They were no longer as violent and ferocious as they were at the beginning. The winner didn't win, and the loser didn't lose. What happened between the Ghost Sword and the Devil Sword and the Tribulation Sword Supreme? In a flash, Zhu Hehe had already arrived in front of Duan Tiansong. The two of them looked at each other deeply and smiled at the same time. Fortunately, although we were plotted against, we didn't make a big mistake. This is God's favor to us. You're still you and I'm still me. Yes, this is indeed our fortune. The two of them spoke very softly. The words that came from one's mouth entered the other's ears. The rest was blown away by the high-altitude hurricane. In the surging wind, the clothes and hair of the two of them fluttered in the wind. The smiles on their faces were warm and sincere, as if they were red. Duan Tiansong's calm and relaxed face gradually turned pale. A touch of pain finally appeared on his face. It was the same for Zhu Hehe on the opposite side. This was the price to pay for breaking free from the demonic shackles. Only with the price of life could one break free from the demonic shackles. Even if the two of them had extremely high cultivation and could temporarily hold on to their last breath of vital energy and not die, they couldn't hold on for too long. Death was finally coming. Dong Wuxiang and Gu Duxing's hearts trembled. To be able to make the second-grade supreme martial artists, who had seen through life and death, feel such pain. What could it be? The expressions on their faces became more and more painful, but the joy in their eyes became more and more. Haha. Zhu Hehe suddenly trembled all over and laughed to the sky. He said loudly, "I, Zhu Hehe, have killed countless people in my life. People call me the Devil's Sword. I've killed good people and bad people. There were also many times when I killed the wrong person. But in this life of mine, I believe that I'm worthy of the title of Enforcer. I, Zhu Hehe, am known as the Sword Bearer of the Enforcers. I'm recognized as the Executioner, and my hands are stained with blood. But still, I've been cursed countless times in my life. But my reputation is even better. I'm indomitable and worthy of the title of a man. Today, before I go, I almost lost my integrity. The demonic aura is still raging in my heart, but I'm already a dead man. Even if the demonic aura isn't extinguished, what can it do to me?" Zhu Hehe laughed loudly. The corner of Duan Tiansong's mouth twitched, as if he wanted to say something, but he couldn't. He just smiled and nodded repeatedly. Bright streaks of blood had already broken out of the corner of his mouth. The two of them stood side by side. Suddenly, they tried their best to straighten their bodies. It seemed that even this straightening of their bodies required a lot of effort. A thin trace of blood appeared on Duan Tiansong's throat. Faint traces of blood also appeared on his waist. And where Zhu Hehe's heart was, blood began to surge. But the two of them didn't seem to notice this at all. They straightened their bodies and bowed deeply to Gu Duxing and Dong Wushang. Thank you. My illustrious name has finally not fallen. It's all thanks to the help of the two of you. Dong Wushang and Gu Duxing only felt heartfelt sadness in their hearts. Duan Tiansong had already turned around. Enduring the pain, he said to Zhu Hehe, "Brother, even if you and I die, our spirits may not be at peace. Our spirits seem to still be useful to those demons, right?" Zhu Hehe suddenly realized something. He said to Dong Wushang and Gu Duxing, "Yes, I almost forgot about this. Don't forget, you must destroy our spirits." Chapter 1643. A solemn expression appeared on Zhu Hehe's face as he said in a low voice, "Once we succumb to the devil, even our spirit will lose its freedom. Even if we die, our spirit will return to the hands of those who have succumbed to the devil and become nourishment. When we succumbed to the devil previously, we can no longer control our spirit completely. Even if we use the dharma of destruction of body and soul, we can only destroy the part of our spirit that we can control. As for the spirit that has already been demonized, we are already powerless to destroy it. Good people, please go all the way. Just destroy our spirit and soul and consign us to eternal damnation." A conflicted expression appeared on Gu Duxing's face. "This matter no longer concerns us. If our spirit ends up benefiting the extraterrestrial demons, it will only harm more lives in the world." Duan Tiansong said weakly, "Lord Gu, there is a knife above the word tolerance. Tolerance is multifaceted. If you can't bear it now, you are being cruel to us and to the world. If you are cruel to us now, you are being cruel to the world and to yourself. If you allow our spirit to strengthen the extraterrestrial demons, the two of us will truly die with regrets. Please fulfill my wish, I beg you." "Alright. On behalf of the world, I thank the two seniors for their kindness." Gu Duxing said decisively, "When this matter is over, I will personally erect a memorial tablet for the two seniors. It will be written, 'Ghost Sword and Devil Saber, rule the world.'" "I am very relieved." The two of them smiled at the same time. They looked at each other and said at the same time, "Brothers, let's go." Blood spurted out from various wounds on their bodies at the same time. Gu Duxing's last sword strike seemed casual, but in fact, it had already severed Duan Tiansong's throat and waist, cutting off his life force. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for him to break free from the devil's shackles on his own. As for Duan Tiansong, he was able to hold on until now because of his peerless cultivation that he had painstakingly cultivated for 10,000 years to maintain his last breath. As for Dong Wushang's last strike, even though he had withdrawn his saber in time, the sharp saber energy could not be withdrawn in time, especially when Zhu Hehe was still bent on seeking death. Without any resistance, the saber energy that penetrated his body had already shattered his heart meridians. The injuries of the two of them were already so severe that there was no longer any possibility of them surviving. However, the two of them barely managed to survive because they were worried that their spirits would be used by the Dharma Supreme and the extraterrestrial demon. Although they were dead, they would still be a hindrance to the human world. But now that they had gotten Gu Duxing and Dong Wushang's promises, their minds relaxed. They didn't want to force themselves to continue walking together. Just as the two's injuries were acting up at the same time, a clear and resonant roar suddenly sounded from the center of the capital city, stirring up winds. Then, an awe-inspiring sword light soared into the sky like a bolt of lightning. It made a turn in the air, and the sword chi whistled. With the sound of wind and thunder that shook the heavens and earth, he rode on his sword and flew away at an extremely fast speed. This figure flashed across the sky at an extremely fast speed. However, it left a dazzling sword light that spanned hundreds of miles in the sky above the capital. Even after that person had left for a long time, there was still no sign of it disappearing. What a sharp sword! Duan Tiansong's dimmed eyes suddenly brightened. He asked in a weak voice, "Was it the Tribulation Sword Master who just passed by?" Gu Duxing said, "It was Big Brother Chu. I didn't expect that we would be able to witness the Tribulation Sword Master's majesty before we die." Duan Tiansong and Zhu Hehe smiled in relief. We have no more regrets in this life. Gu Duxing and Dong Wushang didn't reply. The bodies of these two were already torn apart in the air, and they died with their bodies dismembered. The last words of their lives came from Zhu Hehe's mouth. The demonic saber may be called a demon, but my heart is not a demon. Sirs, please don't forget to destroy our spirits. Even if we die, we won't be used by the demon. Gu Duxing and Dong Wushang's expressions were solemn and serious. They said, "Rest assured, seniors. Our names will last for eternity." A saber and a sword, mixed with the top-grade spirits of Gu Duxing and Dong Wushang, came crashing down violently. After the death of Duan Tiansong and Zhu Hehe, their spirits dissipated into the world in an instant, forever annihilated. Clouds and mist drifted. It was as if they could still vaguely see the gratified smiles of those two. But after that, their life marks completely dissipated into the world. Gu Duxing held his sword and bowed. Dong Wushang stood respectfully with his saber in hand, paying the highest respect to these two law enforcement seniors. Both of their hearts were heavy. The demonic saber, my heart is not a demon. Such a hero, but he was plotted against by the Dharma Supreme. At this moment, Gu Duxing and Dong Wushang's hatred was overwhelming. There had never been a time when they wanted to kill someone so badly. The Dharma Supreme. You really deserve to die. After a while, Gu Duxing seriously cleaned up the remains of the two seniors. Only then did he calm down and said, "The one who went by just now was obviously boss. He left in such a hurry. Did something happen over there? Let's go over and take a look too. We can help out a little," Dong Wushang suggested. Gu Duxing nodded. The two of them called out to their brothers and directly flew up on their swords. They turned into flowing light and disappeared into the north. After a long, long time, in the capital below, the crowd of petrified spectators finally regained their ability to move. Everyone was discussing animatedly. Tribulation Sword Master and Tribulation made their first high-profile appearance under this sky. The shock they left in the world was really unparalleled. The law enforcement supreme martial artists who had been law enforcement officers for 10,000 years actually died in the hands of Tribulation's brothers in a one-on-one battle. Although this fact had long been expected, Tribulation was invincible in the world, but similarly, it was even more unexpected. After all, they were still so young. Tribulation is indeed worthy of his reputation. He's really amazing. I really didn't expect that they could really kill a low-level supreme martial artist. Although I've heard that Tribulation was invincible in the world as one, but it still feels a little like a dream. It's just a pity for the two seniors, Ghost Sword and Devil Saber. Sigh, although they were enemies with Tribulation, I've never heard of any major misdeeds in their lives. Today they died just like that. I just feel, sigh, it's really a pity. Duan Tiansong and the rest didn't talk loudly in the sky. Apart from the high-level martial artists who had reached a certain level of cultivation and were at least 5th-grade supreme martial artists, the rest of the people below couldn't hear it. Those few who heard it had a look of sadness on their faces, but absolutely no one said the truth. Everyone made a decision at the same time: keep their mouths shut. This matter concerned the reputation of the two seniors, Ghost Sword and Devil Saber. No one could bear to say that they were controlled by the extraterrestrial demon after their deaths. That would be a betrayal of conscience. This truth could only be written on a monument for Ghost Sword and Devil Saber after they killed the extraterrestrial demon and wrote, "Died in battle with the extraterrestrial demon." But if anyone said it now, the result would be certain: they wouldn't be able to live past today. Hundreds of miles away, the Dharma Supreme suddenly stopped in his tracks. His eyes turned into two black holes as he stared at the void in front of him, his long hair fluttering without wind. After a long time, he gritted his teeth and said, "How can this be? Can he temporarily keep his mind clear just because he has returned to the dead? He can actually reject the call of my demonic seed and abandon my extraterrestrial demon order. What a bastard! He's dead, and he still wants to set me up. Damn it." He turned and left. Duan Tiansong and Zhu Hehe had awakened at the last moment. Their divine bodies had dissipated, and they had disappeared from the world forever. But this also made it impossible for the Dharma Supreme to receive the power from the demonic spirit. Naturally, there was no need for the Dharma Supreme to go. Moreover, he was very anxious to find the extraterrestrial demon and ask him what exactly was going on. If it was an exception, it would be fine. But if everyone was like that, what should he do? This wasn't a good sign. He shouldn't waste his efforts in vain. I didn't expect the tribulation now to have actually grown to such a level. It's really hard to imagine how he could improve so quickly and so shockingly. Damn it. The Dharma Supreme's face was full of worry. As he flew, he calculated and deliberated in his heart. Should I change my tactics at the Tianding Grand Meeting to kill the Tribulation Sword Master first? On the other side, Chu Yang directly took out the Tribulation Sword and flew on it. His speed was as fast as lightning. He was practically burning with anxiety. Chu Yang left in a hurry because he sensed something. At that time, he was waiting for his brother's triumphant return at the inn. Moreover, Mo Tianji had arranged for his brothers to go out and enter from the outside. They pushed forward layer by layer, and all parties were synchronized. It was the Gue Yuan formation. Chu Yang stayed in the inn and didn't move. Although he seemed to be doing nothing, in fact, it was the Yuan in the Gue Yuan formation. With the Tribulation Sword Master's powerful fate energy, it suppressed the evil energy in all directions and ensured the safety of his brothers. At this time, Chu Yang's mind was very sharp. The power of his divine sense was unparalleled. Seeing that his brothers had already reunited and that Gu Duxing and Dong Wushang had single-handedly defeated two supreme martial artists who had been famous for a long time, Chu Yang was extremely happy. But at this time, he suddenly felt a vibration in his divine sense. It was an extremely unusual vibration. Something had happened. And something big had happened. Something major had happened to someone he cared about. Now that he was unsettled, this meant that something had happened to someone he cared about. How could Chu Yang not be shocked? At this moment, Chu Yang felt extremely uneasy. He couldn't help but close his eyes. However, he seemed to hear a voice calling out to him at the top of its lungs for help. Itchy, itchy, help. Chu Yang suddenly quivered and jumped up. It was him? But what could have happened to him? Tan Tan's current cultivation was very high. He was definitely stronger than Chu Yang. Moreover, he had a group of 3 stars divine clan elders by his side. With such strength, it was difficult to find a match in the world. How could he be in danger? Maybe there really was someone who was qualified and capable of threatening Tan Tan and his group. The Heavenly Demon. After recuperating for a while, the Heavenly Demon had recovered his strength. Could it be that the Heavenly Demon had encountered Tan Tan? Tianji, you take charge of this place. I have urgent matters to attend to. Chu Yang only had time to say these words before he suddenly broke through the roof of the inn on his flying sword. Then he broke through the sky like a thunderbolt. Chapter 1644. Huang Xiaoyou and the experts of the Huang clan who heard the noise and came out to watch didn't discover anything. They only had time to see the big hole on the top of their heads. Mo Tianji's slender figure flashed and appeared where Chu Yang was standing. He frowned and said, "What happened? What can happen at this moment?" How would Huang Xiaoyou and the others know what happened? Upon hearing this question, they couldn't help but shake their heads blankly. Mo Tianji tightly knitted his brows. What is it that could make Chu Yang so impatient to go there? And he didn't even have time to inform us? He wanted to use the World Master to check the secrets of heaven, but he had just used his heart's blood. Although he had already used heavy pills to make up for it, if he were to trigger a backlash from the secrets of heaven, he would easily die. Mo Tianji frowned and forced himself to calm down. He thought, no matter what, Chu Yang will definitely send back news once he goes. Let's stay calm for the time being and adapt to the situation. After a while, he felt that his brothers were chasing after Chu Yang. He couldn't help but feel relieved. With these people gathered together, even if they were to face the joint forces of the Heavenly Demon and the Dharma Supreme, they should be able to protect themselves, Tan Tan's side had already reached a critical moment. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that his life was at risk. As for why Tan Tan and the strongest lineup of the 3 Stars Divine Clan were still in a desperate situation, the reason was very simple. The heavenly demon who had recovered a lot of his strength was really too strong. He was so strong that he had far surpassed the limits of the heavenly layer practitioners. To put it bluntly, with the heavenly demon's current strength, he was definitely invincible in the heavenly layer. Unless Zi Xiecheng reappeared, there would be no chance of defeating the enemy. Moreover, it was calculated with the current heavenly demon. If he really recovered to his peak state, even Zi Xiecheng might reappear. He wouldn't be able to handle it. Previously, when Tan Tan used his strongest move and shouted, "Help!" Not to mention the elders of the 3 Stars Divine Clan, even the heavenly demon was about to collapse. As a peak-level supreme martial artist, as the leader of a clan, as the owner of the supreme demon body, as a self-proclaimed demon king, in short, no matter which identity he had, Master Tan, who had many high-level identities, didn't seem to have a reason to shout for help. But he still shouted. Moreover, he shouted it with righteousness and confidence. His voice was like a great bell, and the sound lingered in the air for 3 days. His voice shook 1,000 miles. The heavenly demon could not understand this. He said angrily, "As the leader of a race and the strongest of the current generation, he is the leader of a race. You're shameless. You still have the nerve to call yourself the Great Demon King? Giving the supreme demon body to you is simply a waste, bah." Tan Tan angrily said, "You spat on me? I'm the one who spat at you. Are you out of your mind? Is your reputation or your life more important? Looking at you, it seems like you've lived for a long time. Have you been living like a dog?" How could he not understand such a simple logic? You dare to come out and mess around? I really don't know how you managed to survive until now. Are you too lucky or are your enemies too unlucky? The heavenly demon was speechless. Talking to this little normal was definitely asking for trouble. This was definitely a mischievous guy who never played his cards rationally. For such people, it was more important to get rid of them as soon as possible. The sooner, the better. The most important thing was that this was the supreme demon body. It was almost the legendary ultimate demon body. This was an extremely good thing that even the top-notch heavenly demon seniors yearned to obtain. In the entire heavenly demon clan, only a few people above the heavenly demon king could possess the supreme demon body. Today, such a good thing had fallen from the sky and landed on his head. The series of bad luck that he had encountered previously was not a problem at all. As long as he could obtain this supreme demon body, it didn't matter how unlucky he was. It didn't matter. As soon as he thought that he would be able to possess this little supreme demon body, that wouldn't be a wonderful thing. The heavenly demon looked at Tan Tan as if a pervert had seen a beauty, or a mouse had seen rice. He was endlessly salivating. Without saying anything further, he stepped forward and attacked with all his strength. He used his greatest effort and mental strength to capture Tan Tan as quickly as possible. He wanted to possess his body. A burst of dense demon fog suddenly spread in all directions. The entire world was almost shielded by this demon fog in an instant. The heavenly demon cackled strangely. I was merciful just now and allowed all of you to contend with me. Now, I'm going to attack with all my strength. Lower realm ant, prepare to face the consequences. The heavenly demon admitted that he had been merciful and hadn't gone all out. He wasn't praising himself. Against Guigu just now, because he hadn't seen through Tan Tan's physique clearly, he would definitely gain a quick victory if he went all out. However, it would also worsen his injuries. It was very likely that his injuries that had just recovered would worsen again, or even become unmanageable. But right now, with such a great temptation as the supreme demon body in front of him, why would the heavenly demon care about serious injuries? As long as he could possess this body, so what if his injuries were a little more serious? With a strange laugh, the heavenly demon's aura surged and he flew down. Tan Tan was already scared by his gaze to begin with. Seeing that he didn't care about the others at all and only attacked him, he was even more certain of something. Although this guy's demonic aura is abnormally huge, it's not as pure and authentic as mine. Could it be that he's targeting me? The thought had only just occurred to him when the other party's heavenly demon hand had already transformed into several dozen arms. They reached out menacingly from a stretch of demon fog and grabbed down at Tan Tan. In an instant, they practically sealed off all of Tan Tan's paths of retreat. Seeing this, Tan Tan didn't dare to be negligent. With a loud roar, he activated all of his cultivation and shouted, "Mountains and rivers in one hand." His right hand reached out abruptly. The entire palm was pitch black and shiny. It really had an aura as if it was lifting up the mountains and rivers in the world as it went up to meet the attack. The heavenly demon clicked his tongue and said, "You've got some moves. This move is quite interesting." Countless palms suddenly shook and instantly disappeared. They condensed into a single hand and came down heavily, clashing with Tan Tan's hand without any fuss. The moment the two attacks came into contact, the entire ground suddenly shook fiercely. Then it came to a standstill. The next moment, the ground within a radius of 1,000 feet was suddenly sent flying, rolling out in all directions. This clash actually really had the power to cause mountains to crumble and the earth to split. In the midst of the clash, Tan Tan let out a muffled groan. His entire body was pressed down to the ground. No matter how deep he sank, the ground around him would sink as deep as he sank. It flew out in circles. When it flew up into the air, before the first wave of soil had even landed, the second wave of soil had already flown up. In an instant, the world turned dark. Gu Igu and the others around them actually couldn't keep their footing, swaying left and right. Now you know how powerful it is, right? This move is the Heavenly Demon's secret technique. Heavenly Demon Descends. The Heavenly Demon cackled strangely. Heavenly Demon Descends is naturally earth-shattering and earth-shattering. Little one, surrender now that you know how powerful it is. The title of Demon King isn't something that just anyone is worthy of. At this moment, his right hand was still pressing down on Tan Tan's right hand. His entire body was suspended in midair. Layers of black fog gradually rose around him. Just like that, he pressed Tan Tan all the way down. If not for the fact that he coveted Tan Tan's supreme demonic body and didn't want Tan Tan's body to be damaged in any way, this attack would have been enough to smash Tan Tan into smithereens. Even though the heavenly demon was heavily injured, his full-powered attack at this moment was still not something that a heavenly layer martial artist could withstand. The demonic aura that Tan Tan possessed was much purer than his. However, the difference in their cultivation was simply too great. No matter how hard he tried, he still couldn't break free from his right hand. He could only continue being pressed down like this. In the blink of an eye, he had already sunk 1,000 feet into the ground. Wait! Tan Tan had to use all his strength to be able to shout. After that, he was panting like a bull. His face and ears were red. Black light shone in the heavenly demon's eyes. "How is it? Little one, what do you want to say?" The force on his hand relaxed a little, giving Tan Tan a chance to catch his breath and speak. "I surrender," Tan Tan shouted. "I admit that I can't beat you. Seeing that you don't want to kill me, I might as well surrender. Isn't this what you want?" "Surrender? You're saying that you want to surrender?" The heavenly demon urged his hand and said, "Really?" Tan Tan suddenly felt that his whole body was about to be crushed. He reluctantly shouted, "You're courting death. Quickly let go. You only need to let go. I will surrender. This demon king is the leader of the clan. I won't go back on my words." The heavenly demon snorted. He withdrew his hand and flew back. "Consider yourself sensible. Since you've surrendered, don't think about—" His voice hadn't faded when he saw Tan Tan jump out of the deep pit. His entire body was like a black light as he fled at high speed. He cursed, "You're delusional. Is Old Elephant the kind of person who would surrender?" His figure was already thousands of feet away in the blink of an eye. He had just said that he wouldn't go back on his words. But he had already gone back on his words in the blink of an eye. The heavenly demon was almost angered to death. He leaped and chased after him. "Aren't you the leader of the clan? With such a status, you actually went back on your words. You're too despicable and shameless. Tan Tan sped up and retorted sarcastically, so what if I go back on my words and get fat? Anyway, I won't get fat no matter what I eat. Let's see if I can get fat by going back on my words this time. So what if I'm fooling you? Bite me then. The heavenly demon was almost driven mad by a certain someone's shameless words. Gu, and the others made a big fuss as they rushed over from behind. Although the enemy they had encountered this time was simply too strong, the Divine King's life was in danger at any moment. How could they possibly stay out of this? Tan Tan shouted from afar, "You idiots, don't follow me anymore. Hurry up and go by yourselves. I'll bring this fellow around to have some fun." If Tan Tan had the upper hand at this moment, Gu and the others naturally wouldn't be worried and would act according to Tan Tan's instructions. However, the Divine King was currently in an absolute disadvantageous situation where he could lose his life at any moment. How could they abandon him and leave? Even if they knew that they were no match for him, they had to protect him with their lives. If they could deplete a little more of the enemy's strength, they would be able to fight for a little more chance of survival for the Divine King. Gu let out a loud roar. He was the first to fly up. The other elders also flew up and surrounded the heavenly demon. Even if they had to die, they had to stall for more time so that the Divine King could escape safely. When the heavenly demon saw that there were actually people who dared to stop him and that Tan Tan was getting further and further away, he couldn't help but be enraged to the extreme. With a loud roar, endless black fog came out and spread out endlessly. All of a sudden, demonic flames filled the sky. The heavenly demon attacked with all his might. Chapter 1645. Tan Tan almost vomited blood. Why were all his subordinates such idiots? Did they only have muscles in their heads and no brains at all? His original intention of escaping was to lure the enemy away so that Gu and the rest would be fine first. If he was alone, then he would be able to be much more flexible. Furthermore, seeing how the heavenly demon's attention was unusually focused on him, there must be something on him that the heavenly demon was looking forward to. Luring him away was the current highest level of strategy. Even if he ended up dying in the hands of the enemy, after all, he wouldn't have any subordinates or brothers who would die in front of him. No brothers would die because of him. To Tan Tan or the Saint King of the Divine Clan, this was the most important point. In his previous life, the 3-star Saint King could be said to have a fresh memory of the great calamity that happened tens of thousands of years ago. Other things aside, what he couldn't accept the most was his loyal subordinates dying for him. Yet today, he had encountered such a strong enemy yet again. Yet, his subordinates and brothers had once again risked their lives to fight the enemy for his survival. With a furious roar, Tan Tan turned and charged back. He charged back toward the battlefield where the heavenly demon was fighting against Gu and the rest. His heart and blood were already boiling and burning. If I die, so be it. In any case, I won't escape even if I die this time. It's just that, Chu Yang, you mustn't come. Tan Tan charged all the way, his heart filled with endless regret. There was no other reason other than the regret he felt for that cry for help earlier. Previously, he didn't expect the enemy to be so strong that there was no chance of victory at all. Initially, he had thought that with Chu Yang and the rest here, no matter how strong the enemy was, they would be able to handle it. But from the looks of it now, the situation was very wrong. This heavenly demon was simply too strong. Even if Chu Yang and the rest could make it in time and everyone present joined forces sincerely, they would still not be a match for this heavenly demon. This fellow's strength had clearly exceeded the limits of this space. If Chu Yang came, he would only be courting death. Therefore, you mustn't come. Tan Tan Xian crazily roared. His entire body transformed into a black light and rushed into the battlefield at a very fast speed. With a flash of cold light in his sleeves, the long sword that Chu Yang had specially made for him appeared in his hand. The tip of the sword had just flashed when Tan Tan had already channeled all his energy, strength, and cultivation into it. In an instant, sword transformation thunderclap. An awe-inspiring stream of light charged towards the heavenly demon. "Oh, Saint King!" Gu cried out loudly, his voice sorrowful. As he shouted, he suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. In just a short period of contact, the heavenly demon had almost turned into a monster with millions of arms. Gu Igu and the others didn't have the slightest intention of evading the frenzied attacks of the individuals blocking their way. Because the moment they did, the extraterrestrial demons would immediately go after Tan Tan. Everyone fought head-on without regard for anything else. However, while their fighting spirit was commendable, their cultivation was ultimately far inferior. In a short moment, everyone had been seriously injured. In fact, it was very likely that these people would have died in the next moment if Tan Tan hadn't returned in time to rescue them. Tan Tan wasn't willing to abandon everyone. So, he turned around to confront the powerful enemy at all costs. How could they abandon him? The Three Stars Divine Clan had been in the wind and frost for tens of thousands of years. They were on the verge of extinction. Only when the Holy King came out and led the tribe out of the world of ice and snow could they finally be rescued from the jaws of death. They were willing to throw away their lives. However, they had to ensure the safety of the Saint King. Only the Saint King was safe. Only the Three Stars Divine Clan would have hope. Therefore, Gu Igu and the others were infinitely resolute, determined to defend the Three Stars Divine Clan's hopes and outsiders with their lives. When the extraterrestrial demons went after them, all of them stood up to stop them. It was very obvious. If they wanted to go after our Holy King, they would have to step over our dead bodies. The extraterrestrial demons were in a hurry to go after Tan Tan and snatch the supreme demonic body. However, the few of them joined forces to fight back. Although their strength couldn't compare to the extraterrestrial demons, they were already fighting back with all their might. Even though the extraterrestrial demons used all their strength, they still couldn't get away. For a moment, they roared furiously. Seeing that Tan Tan had actually returned, the extraterrestrial demons were overjoyed instead of shocked. Unexpectedly, this person blocking the way was instead the best strategy to lure the supreme demonic body over. The extremely anxious Tan Tan turned into a streak of light along with his sword, charging over at lightning speed like a meteor descending. An even darker black light flashed across the extraterrestrial demon's eyes. In that instant, the whole world became even dimmer. All of a sudden, his entire body scattered. Yes, it scattered. His entire body abruptly disintegrated and scattered in all directions, leaving behind a huge hole in the middle. It was as if his body had already split into pieces in that instant. Tan Tan became one with his sword. His relentless, sure-kill charge charged through this hole just like that. It was as if his attack had hit empty space. Tan Tan let out a furious roar. Awe-inspiring sword aura suddenly exploded in this hole. Tyrannical power suddenly erupted. The demonic aura in the surroundings immediately surged. The extraterrestrial demons let out a fierce roar. The fatal hand that was grabbing at Gu Igu's head trembled violently and was instantly retracted. The momentum of Tan Tan's sword move just now was indomitable and unstoppable. It was impossible for it to stop. Even the extraterrestrial demons would be somewhat strained when faced with this desperate move of his. That was why the extraterrestrial demons chose to perform the Great Disintegration technique. As long as Tan Tan charged past his body, he would be able to get rid of all these eyesores in front of him in a split second. Besides, if Tan Tan's attack completely hit empty space, the backlash from using the wrong amount of force would also be no small matter. There was a high possibility that Tan Tan's strength would be weakened and it would be more convenient for him to carry out his plans in the future. Therefore, this move could be said to be a brilliant move here. However, despite all the extraterrestrial demons' calculations, they had missed one point. And it was a very important point. Tan Tan was the reincarnation of a demon king from 100,000 years ago. How many secret techniques did he possess? How could he possibly make such a huge mistake of attacking empty space and using the wrong amount of force? Seeing that the extraterrestrial demons had performed the Great Disintegration technique, Tan Tan had already reversed his own origin power in mid-flight. He quickly retracted the sword aura that he had long unleashed and unleashed it at the core of the hole. It attacked the extraterrestrial demon's body indiscriminately from the inside. The extraterrestrial demons could be said to have never imagined this move even in their wildest dreams. Caught off guard, they actually suffered a huge loss. After being violently shaken, the move that they had already unleashed immediately weakened. In reality, this was still because Tan Tan's cultivation was too weak compared to the extraterrestrial demons. If Tan Tan's origin power could reach half of the extraterrestrial demons, this attack would be enough to completely destroy the extraterrestrial demon's body with Tan Tan's extremely pure theory of devil essence. Gu Igu and the others roared in unison, taking advantage of this great opportunity to escape from the extraterrestrial demon's attack range that was enveloped by countless demonic hands. Everyone broke out in cold sweat. None of them had expected the extraterrestrial demons to actually be this strong. It was only when they had actually exchanged blows with them that they realized how terrifying the extraterrestrial demons' evil powers were. In just a few exchanges of blows, they were already severely injured and even in a life-threatening situation. How dare you, Junior? The extraterrestrial demon turned around abruptly and charged toward Tan Tan. His body flitted through the air at high speed, letting out an extremely sharp sound as he sliced through the air. You have already successfully angered the Lord Extraterrestrial Demon. Prepare yourself. Tan Tan snorted coldly and shouted furiously, "Why aren't the few of you leaving? Are you waiting for death?" This shout was directed at Gu Igu and the others. Tan Tan desperately hoped that these old fellows would leave as soon as possible. Gu Igu laughed loudly and pounced forward. If the Saint King doesn't leave, neither will I. If you want to leave, the Saint King should leave first. Tan Tan was so infuriated by Gu Igu's words that he almost blacked out. He desperately fended off the extraterrestrial demon's all-pervasive attacks as he hissed, "Bastard! Gu Igu, you've lived for so many years and yet you still have such a bastard temper. Are you guys planning to play yourselves to death or play me to death?" Gu Igu laughed loudly, already attacking madly behind the extraterrestrial demon. He smiled and said, "Thank you for your praise, Saint King. I will continue to work hard and continue to work hard." Upon hearing such honest words that were akin to an expression of loyalty, Tan Tan only felt waves of bitterness in his mouth. As he watched this elder attack the extraterrestrial demon like a maniac, he heaved a long sigh of helplessness. What was the use of risking his life? It was completely useless. The other party was simply too strong, so strong that it was completely useless even if he risked his life. Bam! Tan Tan only felt as if he had been smashed by a mountain. The extraterrestrial demon's invisible palm landed on his back. There was no trace of this palm at all. The extraterrestrial demon was clearly still on the opposite side, but this palm came from behind him. There wasn't the slightest bit of force that broke through the air, but it was extremely heavy. Even using the analogy of being smashed by a mountain wasn't appropriate enough. Because being smashed by a mountain definitely wouldn't be this serious. The black aura all over Tan Tan's body suddenly exploded and scattered. He staggered, fell to the ground and rolled out. The extraterrestrial demon let out a sinister laugh. He reached out at lightning speed and grabbed at Tan Tan. The supreme demon body was finally going to be his. Tan Tan spat out a mouthful of blood. He tried his best to roll on the ground, barely avoiding the grab. However, the extraterrestrial demon immediately opened his palm and grabbed at him again. The black demonic palm in the air had already expanded to the point where it could cover a radius of several feet. No matter which direction Tan Tan dodged in, he couldn't possibly avoid this claw. It seemed like it was already a foregone conclusion that Tan Tan would fall into the demonic palm. Saint King! Gu Igu flew over and stood in front of Tan Tan, thrusting his sword toward the demonic palm. The extraterrestrial demon didn't dodge or avoid. As if it didn't see anything, it continued to grab at Tan Tan. The moment Gu Igu's sword, which he had poured all his cultivation into, pierced the demonic palm, it shattered into pieces like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. As if struck by lightning, Gu Igu's face suddenly turned blood red. His entire body leaned backward, about to be sent flying by the pressure. Yes, he was going to be sent flying. The extraterrestrial demon's attention had never been on anyone other than Tan Tan. Therefore, even though it could have easily slapped Gu to death, it had already given up. Instead, it wanted to send Gu flying, as long as it didn't interfere with its capture of the supreme demon body. However, Gu-Igu's entire body was almost sent flying by the force. In that instant when he had just started to lean backward, he actually stubbornly held on and forcefully bent his body back again. His two hands struck out fiercely. At the same time, blood began to spurt out from his mouth like a waterfall, mixed with pieces of his internal organs. If he had taken advantage of the momentum and rolled out earlier, his injuries wouldn't have been too serious. However, now that he had forcefully counterattacked, he actually had to endure an impact that was doubled. That was an impact that he couldn't bear. However, he also understood that if he retreated at this moment, the extraterrestrial demon would be able to capture the Saint King. Chapter 1646. Not only could Gu not retreat, he had to go forward instead. This move was equivalent to him taking on all the attacks with his own body. Gu couldn't withstand the heavenly demon's attack at all, let alone the fact that he had already suffered considerable injuries previously. The moment they came into contact, he was already severely injured and his battle prowess plummeted. However, he had already achieved his goal. His only goal in stepping forward was to protect Tan. That was all. The heavenly demon let out a sinister laugh. His huge palm closed around Gu-Igu's hand and squeezed it lightly. However, cracking sounds rang out consecutively. Gu-Igu's arms were completely crushed. He roared furiously and tragically. As though he was going to dig out his heart and liver, he roared, "Divine King! Hurry up and leave." His arms were already broken and he no longer had the strength to attack. Moreover, he was still in the enemy's control. However, he still had his legs and could still retaliate. Even if it was a futile effort, he had to do his best to retaliate. His legs left the ground and hundreds of kicks struck the heavenly demon like a whirlwind. The heavenly demon let out a furious roar. One of his left hands grabbed Gu-Igu's hands while his other right hand struck Gu-Igu's chest fiercely. Almost at the same time, Gu-Igu's hundreds of kicks landed on the heavenly demon's chest like the beating of a drum. Under such a huge force, even the heavenly demon couldn't help but lean backward. It was precisely because of these hundreds of kicks that the right palm that struck Gu-Igu's chest didn't really land a solid blow. However, even though it didn't land a solid blow, this force still had destructive prowess. With a crack, Gu-Igu let out a loud cry. His chest immediately caved in. However, he continued to shout, "Divine King, hurry up and leave." The heavenly demon casually tossed Gu-Igu's body out. He no longer paid any attention to this person who no longer had the ability to retaliate. If this person didn't die, he would instead pin down the owner of that supreme demonic body and wouldn't leave easily. Then he strode toward Tan. However, there was a trace of black blood at the corner of his lips. That was the result of Gu-Igu risking his life. The heavenly demon was furious. He didn't expect that with his cultivation, he would actually be injured when facing a few heavenly-level ants. It looked like he had to end the battle quickly. His figure suddenly flashed randomly. The other 5 elders of the divine clan flew up to stop him at the same time. The 5 of them shouted, "Divine King, please leave quickly." Then, just like what Gu-Igu had done earlier, these 5 people charged toward the heavenly demon without any hesitation. The 5 of them stood shoulder to shoulder. Everyone's eyes were wide open in anger as they roared with all their might. He condensed all of his life's cultivation into a single strike and gave it his all. At this moment, there was only one thought in their minds. "Holy King, run. As long as you are alive, even if we are beheaded, our bodies torn apart, and our souls destroyed, it will be worth it." If it weren't for the fact that Tan was too close to everyone's position right now. Without any hesitation, these people had already launched a self-detonation attack. But now, he was afraid of breaking the vases. He could only risk his life and fight to the death. The heavenly demon cackled strangely, with an unprecedented killing intent. With a kick, the afterimage of the foot was still in the air, but in reality, it had already landed solidly on the chest of a sacred race elder. With a cracking sound, a large hole was kicked out of the elder's chest. However, the elder hugged the heavenly demon's leg tightly and begged in a hoarse voice, "Holy King, why you still here? Hurry up and leave." The heavenly demon's right hand shot out rapidly and collided with another elder's palm. With a boom, that elder's palm was smashed into smithereens. With the remaining force, his arm broke all the way up. Then, the heavenly demon had already smashed his own palm into his own chest. Blood and flesh splattered everywhere. This elder of the 3 Stars Divine clan shouted madly, "Holy King! Hurry up and leave." Then he lowered his head fiercely and bit down hard on the heavenly demon's palm with his white teeth. Without his hands, he couldn't exert any strength with his legs. Thus he used his mouth and teeth. Ah! The heavenly demon let out a cry of pain and quickly retracted his palm. Just like that, he brought out a large piece of flesh and bones from this elder's chest. "Let's fight. Let's die together with him." The other 3 cried out in grief and indignation. Without dodging or avoiding, they charged over directly. They couldn't self-destruct right now. Only by engaging in close combat would they be able to effectively restrain the other party. However, this was also the riskiest and most life-risking method. Yet, the elders did it without any hesitation. "Holy King! Hurry up and leave!" The shouts of the 5 people were still reverberating in the air. In the blink of an eye, the scene had already become so tragic. Tan Tan heard his subordinates shouting madly, "Holy King, hurry up and leave." He saw his old brother's flesh and blood flying everywhere. Tan Tan's entire body started to tremble violently. His eyes slowly turned red. Then, they turned pitch black like ink again. He clenched his teeth tightly. His face was ferocious. Suddenly he felt dizzy. He felt as if the sky and earth were spinning. It was as if he had traveled through time and arrived at the land of nightmares. Or rather, he had returned to the past. The past moment that he didn't want to recall the most. The scene from tens of thousands of years ago, the scene that he didn't want to recall the most, suddenly rushed into his mind at this moment. It was the same at that time. Countless clansmen and subordinates had gathered in front of him and rushed towards the scene of the sky collapsing and earth sinking. "Holy King! Hurry up and leave!" Millions of people had shouted together at that time. They had begged him to leave in unison. They had been small and weak in front of him. But it was precisely because they were small and weak that they had braced themselves to meet the world-destroying flood. They had protected him, the most powerful person among the clansmen. They had even begged him to escape. They had begged him to escape. Tan Tan roared silently. The sacrifice in front of him was just like the past, just like that day when flesh and blood flew everywhere. Suddenly, the wildest reason in his blood was stimulated. He opened his mouth and roared soundlessly. His eyes had already become completely black, a color even darker than the night. It was as if they were 2 black holes. His eyes were still as big as before. But these 2 invisible black holes seemed to be getting bigger and bigger. They were faintly emitting a suction force. It was a powerful suction force that was full of power. "I've already escaped once. I won't escape this time. I won't escape even if I die." Tan Tan's seriously injured body slowly stood up from the ground. The heavenly demon's main target had been locked on him earlier. That silent palm had almost broken all the bones in his body. Tan Tan shouldn't have been able to move under normal circumstances. In fact, he shouldn't have been able to move even a little bit, let alone stand up and circulate his martial power to fight. However, he seemed to have inexplicably recovered at this moment. In fact, it seemed as if he hadn't been injured at all. "I won't escape again at this moment." Tan Tan's 2 black hole-like eyes looked at the heavenly demon. He coldly shouted, "Stop." His voice carried an unquestionable domineering command. It was brimming with a domineering aura that said, "Those who obey me will prosper, and those who resist me will perish." It was still Tan Tan's body. It was still Tan Tan's face. But the current Tan Tan seemed to have changed into a completely different person. His former mischievous and scoundrel had already disappeared without a trace. Instead, it was replaced by the imposing aura of a monarch. It was the boldness of a ruler who ruled over the common people. It was the bearing of someone who looked down on the masses. It was the tyrannical aura of someone who had absolute control over life and death. His words carried the might of a law that couldn't be disobeyed. The heavenly demon couldn't help but stop for some reason. Then he became very dissatisfied with himself for stopping. He angrily shouted, "You, a junior, dare to order me?" Tan Tan's eyes exposed an exceptionally ice-cold killing intention. He insipidly said, "Trash. Has the supreme demon body awakened?" The heavenly demon was startled. But he calmed down after taking a closer look. "So, it's just the return of the sealed power. However, your cultivation will always be limited by the boundary of the heavens even if it has returned to the past. So, you can't reach the true power that the supreme demon body should possess. So, what can you do to me? You're just a relatively strong ant." Tan Tan looked at him with an indifferent expression in his eyes. He insipidly said, "You're right. This king's power has increased. But it's still not enough to kill you. However, I can still fight with you even if I can't kill you. Let go of my subordinate. This king will fight with you. Don't you want to obtain this king's body? Come and get it." The heavenly demon clearly felt that the opposite party's abundant fighting strength was as if he had been reborn. In fact, it wasn't inferior to his current fighting strength. So, he couldn't help but become cautious. After all, he needed to be alive to enjoy the temptation. So, it was better to be careful. The heavenly demon gently let go of his hand. Then he slowly floated in the air. He laughed and said, "Ha, you're a demon among demons. But you're still too weak right now. So, why don't you simply let go of your divine soul and let me use your demon body to display its potential power? Then we can reach the peak together. How about it? I can guarantee that I won't destroy your soul. So, we can rule the world together." The heavenly demon's promise came from the bottom of his heart. Tan Tan's current state had been greatly enhanced. However, he was still inferior to the heavenly demon. So, it was difficult for him to win. The heavenly demon had made a compromise. He was willing to use his two souls to control his body. So, he could quickly develop the potential power of the supreme demon body. In a sense, this was a win-win situation. Tan Tan crossed his hands behind his back and rebuked, "Bullshit. You're just a little demon. You want to control my demon body? You're mistaken." Suddenly he wrinkled his brows. Then he silently laughed. "I used to respect my identity. So I never used to curse. But I didn't expect that this time, he. I've changed a lot. Let's fight." Tan Tan's clothes fluttered without wind. His long hair fluttered in the air. He stood in the pool of blood. Black fog slowly curled up behind him. It was complete darkness. He took a step forward. The black fog behind him became even thicker. The demonic aura that the heavenly demon had released earlier and enveloped a lot of space seemed to have been assimilated by Tan Tan's black fog in this instant. Wisps of demonic aura started to gather around Tan Tan. That kind of domineering aura, that kind of authority, almost filled the entire world. Upon sensing this lawless and awe-inspiring aura, the listless eyes of Gu Igu and the others, who were clearly already on the brink of death, abruptly widened. An indescribable agitation filled their hearts. Hot tears brimmed in their eyes as they sobbed, "Divine King, you finally awakened?" Ignoring the heavy injuries on their bodies, these old men were actually crying out loud in excitement. Chapter 1647. The Awakening of a Divine King. The Three Stars Divine Clan had been waiting for this day for a whole 100,000 years. 100,000 years was too long, far too long. The Supreme Demon Body is indeed impressive. To actually be able to devour my overflowing demonic aura. The heavenly demon's eyes revealed boundless admiration. Looking at Tan Tan, whose entire body was shrouded in black fog, it said fiercely, "It's a pity that your current cultivation is ultimately still a little too weak, so you can't devour it on a large scale. Otherwise, I really wouldn't be able to do anything to you and might even die in your hands. However, victory and defeat can already be determined now. Your supreme demon body is mine. Tan Tan didn't say a word. His body didn't move at all, but he suddenly rose into the air. With one hand behind his back and the other hand waving in the air, a pitch-black saber that was several hundred feet long suddenly appeared and slashed down rapidly. Good move. This move is a little more decent. The heavenly demon let out a long laugh. Without dodging or evading, it rose to meet the attack head-on. A strangely shaped huge black sword appeared in its hand and met Tan Tan's huge saber horizontally. However, the heavenly demon could already sense from the momentum of this saber that Tan Tan's attack this time was definitely a world of difference from before. The force hidden in this saber strike was contained and not revealed. Even if it landed on the ground, as long as Tan Tan didn't want to destroy this land, not even a grain of sand would fly up. However, if Tan Tan deliberately wanted to exert force, then this saber strike would be enough to split the entire place into two. The saber and sword met brazenly in the air. Demonic aura and black fog rose at the same time. They spread out in all directions. Tan Tan drew his saber and spun it. Like a violent storm, 700 saber strikes came down. The heavenly demon's sword flew, not retreating an inch. It received every saber strike without missing anything. Be it technique or precision, both had reached an astonishing level. The battle earlier, they had fought until spatial cracks were everywhere. Its might could be said to be world-shaking. However, the battle between the two of them at this moment was like the most ordinary duels of the pugilistic world in the lower three heavens. At first glance, one saber and one sword looked extremely ordinary. No matter how he flipped and moved, there was nothing out of the ordinary. Even the flowers and plants on the ground didn't notice their battle at all. However, the listless Goo and the others on the ground all revealed extremely shocked expressions in their eyes. That was the realm of returning to one's original state. This was already the realm of legends. Although the weapons of these two people did not seem to have any power attached to them, everyone knew that these two people were using the most precise method to flexibly use their own elemental energy. That was an almost perfect control. Not a single bit would be wasted. All the power would only explode when attacking the opponent. As long as the power did not come into contact with the opponent's body and did not cause any harm to the opponent, then the power would be completely suppressed from leaking out. Not a single detail was missed. In the blink of an eye, the two of them had already exchanged thousands of blows. In the realm of returning to one's true self, every move was divine, appearing and disappearing unpredictably. Every move was exquisite to the extreme. The heavenly demon's devil chi was still being emitted. Tan Tan's black fog was also unceasingly engulfing and expanding. A lot of the surrounding devil energy had already been assimilated by the black fog and had become Tan Tan's power. However, the battle between the two of them was completely different from the battle in the fog. Or rather, the result was the exact opposite. With the heavenly demon activating his cultivation at all costs and regardless of the cost, even though Tan Tan's moves were exceptionally exquisite, his cultivation was ultimately inferior by quite a bit. He was already starting to slowly fall into a disadvantageous position. Goo and the others watched on with widened eyes. However, they were already too severely injured and on the verge of death. They couldn't even move at all and could only feel anxious. Actually, even if everyone was as healthy as usual, the battle before them wasn't something they could intervene in. The difference in their levels was too great. The heavenly demon was actually already secretly complaining about it right now. Ignoring his injuries, he forcibly activated his full strength with the intention of ending the battle as quickly as possible. Although he looked impressive now, he actually knew in his heart that he might not be able to hold on for too long. He might not be able to hold on for much longer. Even in the most ideal situation, he would only be able to hold on for another 15 minutes. If he still couldn't take down Tan Tan, then he would have no choice but to retreat. Moreover, after retreating this time, his injuries would definitely relapse again and become even more serious than before. It would definitely endanger his life, spirit, and origin energy. Therefore, he had hardened his heart, and his attacks had become heavier and heavier. I must capture Tan Tan before I reach my limit. Then I must extract his soul. Then I must enter the devil body and dominate this supreme body. Only then can I preserve my divine soul and primordial power. On Tan Tan's side, he was even more anxious. Gu Igu and the others were severely injured and their lives were in danger at every turn. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that they were on the verge of death. If he couldn't defeat the heavenly demon as quickly as possible, these few people would really be finished. However, how could it be easy to defeat him as quickly as possible? He was already gradually falling into a disadvantageous position and was almost unable to retaliate, let alone defeat him. As for defeating him as quickly as possible, it was practically a fool's dream. After he suddenly activated his old soul earlier, his strength had undoubtedly increased tremendously. If he were to escape with just his original body, Tan Tan could be said to have 10,000% confidence. However, if he were to leave, what would happen to Gu Igu and the others? There would only be a Tan Tan who would die in battle. There would definitely be no Saint Kings who would escape. Therefore, Tan Tan could only fight with his life on the line and hope to create an impossible miracle. Right now, Tan Tan was fighting with his life on the line. The same went for the heavenly demon. It was just that Tan Tan wasn't aware of the heavenly demon's difficulties. Sensing that the other party's attacks were becoming more and more concentrated and their might was becoming heavier and heavier, Tan Tan's heart also finally sank bit by bit. Could it be that I'm going to fall here in the end? Death isn't scary, but what about those subordinates and brothers who used their lives to protect me? Right at this moment, a deafening roar suddenly came from afar. From the direction of the capital, a majestic sword light that resembled a shooting star was hurtling toward them at extreme speed, bringing with it rolling wind and thunder. Before the person arrived, the majestic sword aura that filled the entire world already revealed the identity of the person who had come. The Tribulation Sword Master. In this heavenly layer world, there was absolutely no other sword expert who could reach such a level of power. In this world, there was only the Tribulation Sword Master, only the Tribulation Sword Master, only the Tribulation Sword. Tan Tan became even more anxious. No matter how much Chu Yang's cultivation had improved, even though the Tribulation Sword was unparalleled in the world, its might was only at the level of Gu Igu and the others at best. Although it was already at the peak below the heavenly demon, it still wasn't qualified enough to intervene in the battle between him and the heavenly demon. If Chu Yang forcefully intervened, he would probably really disappear from this world completely after this battle. However, judging from the momentum of Chu Yang's arrival, he was already on his way. There was no way he would stop halfway. Tan Tan's heart heated up. He shouted, "Chu Yang, don't come over. Hurry up and leave." His heart was filled with endless regret, as if he was being fried in oil. This fool, he actually really came to court death. What a bastard, what a bastard. Chu Yang flew over on his sword and immediately saw the demonic aura and black fog rolling in front of him. Two figures seemed to be soaring through the clouds and fog as they fought fiercely. Chu Yang was naturally very familiar with Tan Tan's figure. He recognized him at a glance. Between these two people, the one who had already fallen into a disadvantageous position and was in imminent danger was his own junior martial brother. At this moment, the anger in Chu Yang's heart soared endlessly. Without even thinking, he increased his strength and flew over on his sword before he even landed on the ground. Chu Yang turned a deaf ear to Tan Tan's voice. He just used all his strength to activate his sword. Don't come over? Damn it, then what am I doing here? Watching you die? Looking at his junior martial brother's indescribably miserable appearance, Chu Yang only felt his head explode. In an instant, he lost all rationality. How dare you hurt my brother? Under such a violent rage, the heaven-piercing divine technique was activated without regard for the consequences. For the first time, it started to circulate rapidly in Chu Yang's meridians. Chu Yang roared and shouted, "Slaughter the world!" So what? An extremely blazing white light erupted from the Calamity Sword. Its brightness definitely surpassed the brightness of the sun in the sky. It completely condensed into the size of the tip of the sword. With an unbridled aura, it charged madly toward the extraterrestrial demon. So what if he slaughtered the world? For the first time, Chu Yang condensed all the force of this domineering move into a single point. Chu Yang was confident that even if the Dharma Supreme and Wu Jueqing were to join forces, this sword of his would definitely be able to severely injure either of them. This was no longer just a simple estimation. It was Chu Yang's absolute confidence. The extraterrestrial demon was obviously so strong that it was difficult to estimate. Even Gu Igu and many other lower-level supreme martial artists were already lying on the ground. Only Tan Tan was barely able to contend with it. Then, Tan Tan must have once again awakened the spirit of his previous life. Otherwise, there was no way he could have done this. After all, Tan Tan's previous strength wasn't that much stronger than Gu Igu and the others. However, Chu Yang was well aware of how powerful Tan Tan's divine soul had been in his previous life. For an extraterrestrial demon to be able to completely suppress Tan Tan under such circumstances, even Chu Yang himself, who had improved, was still no match for it. Even if he joined forces with Tan Tan, it might not necessarily work. Therefore, if he wanted to resolve Tan Tan's crisis, this might be the only chance he had. All these flashed through Chu Yang's mind. He thought through everything. Therefore, Chu Yang activated all of his cultivation and emptied all of the energy in his dantian. He condensed all of his power into this sword, a sword of pure slaughter. Chu Yang didn't even dare to use other calamity sword techniques to complement it, for fear that it would reduce the pure destructive power of this sword. This sword was almost as powerful as Chu Yang's self-destruction. And it was the kind that didn't take into account the addition of the calamity sword. However, after this sword attack was launched and its power was unleashed to the maximum, Chu Yang himself would be in an awkward situation where he couldn't move at all. He wouldn't even be able to move a finger, truly at the mercy of the extraterrestrial demon. Therefore, this sword must succeed. Chapter 1648. When the heavenly demon and Tan Tan discovered Chu Yang's presence, Minister Chu charged in with the momentum of a thunderbolt. What harm was there in slaughtering the entire world? This sword was infused with boundless rage. It was a sword that had been pushed to the limit. It completely disregarded the consequences and charged straight into the battlefield where the two great experts were going to fight. Other than the sword move, he didn't even say a single unnecessary word. After a long and arduous journey, before he even landed on the ground, he launched a powerful strike, the only strike. Striking with full force. This strike was even extremely casual, because both the heavenly demon and Tan Tan thought that Chu Yang should at least land on the ground and take a breather. But they didn't expect that this person actually didn't even say a word or make a sound before he started right away. Moreover, it was a strike that risked his life to the very end, a strike that would either succeed or die trying. Right at this moment, because Tan Tan suddenly saw Chu Yang, he was distracted and the heavenly demon's 3 punches and 2 kicks landed on him at the same time. Tan Tan let out a loud cry and flew backward. He turned his head desperately to look at Chu Yang, his expression anxious. Baidu search, to see the latest chapter. He shouldn't have come. With a flash of his sword, Chu Yang didn't even bat an eyelid or care about the retreating Tan Tan. Just like that, he brazenly brushed past Tan Tan's side and charged over with the momentum of a thunderbolt. The two figures of the Marshall brothers crossed each other and separated. A sinister sneer flashed across the heavenly demon's eyes. A wave of past and old hatred welled up in his heart. When he experimented with his spirit the last time, a considerable portion of his energy had been accidentally devoured by this little guy. Otherwise, he would have recovered 20% of his cultivation by now, or even more. If he had recovered 20% of his cultivation, wouldn't it be as easy as flipping his hand to deal with this supreme demonic body now? Why would he have to be in such a dilemma and put in such a difficult position? At this moment, this little guy actually delivered himself to his doorstep. This was what it meant to barge into hell when there was a path to heaven. Although this fellow spirit was abnormally strong, The cultivation he displayed was at best only on par with that Guigu. In fact, it was even slightly inferior. Although this sword seemed to have a great momentum and the sword move was swift and fierce, but even that fatty Guigu was easily dealt with. How could he be an exception this time? You're courting death. The corners of the heavenly demon's mouth curled up in a sinister smile. His two hands, one in front and one behind, met Chu Yang's sword tip without any intention of dodging. He had to shatter his sword in one strike and kill this brat. He had to destroy his spirit and consign him to eternal damnation. He took a deep breath. ZJ's hand. Even the famous divine sword of the layered heavens could not harm him in the slightest, let alone an ant-like warrior of the layered heavens. In the blink of an eye, Chu Yang and his sword crashed into the heavenly demon's palm. Be careful! Tan Tan shouted. The sinister smile on the heavenly demon's face instantly froze. The next moment, the heavenly demon screamed in agony. ZJ's well-tempered palms were only able to block the opponent's sword for a short while. But in the next moment, it was like a piece of tofu meeting a sharp knife. With a cheese sound, it was rushed over. This heavenly demon was still cruelly thinking about how to ravage the other party and had yet to react. Chu Yang let out a loud shout. So what if he slaughtered the entire world? All the condensed sword aura in this move suddenly erupted to the maximum the moment the sword tip rushed into the opponent's palm. Thousands of sword aura rushed into the heavenly demon's body almost at the same time. It invaded all the meridians in the heavenly demon's body. Motherfucker! How is this possible? This is a Shmi sword. This is a Shmi sword after all? The heavenly demon screamed wildly. He really did not expect this brat's sword to be so sharp. The heavenly demon aura in his body surged fiercely. He intended to block the other party's sword aura. But Chu Yang's momentum was unrelenting. The sword tip continued to press forward in the heavenly demon's palm. It pierced into the palm. It pierced into the forearm. It pierced into the arm. It pierced into the shoulder. The heavenly demon's bones shattered like a hot knife through butter under the tribulation sword. Chu Yang let out a fierce roar. The layered heaven's sword aura exploded. The heavenly demon aura came from all directions, intending to block. However, Chu Yang rushed into the extraterrestrial demon's body with his sword. Boom! The heavenly demon's entire left shoulder was smashed into pieces by Chu Yang. Flesh and blood flew everywhere, turning into black rain. Yes, his flesh and blood were all black. The heavenly demon screamed miserably. Half of his body completely turned into nothingness. Chu Yang had actually rushed out from his body and took away a large amount of dense heavenly demon fog. Streams of sword aura rushed out from the heavenly demon's body and shot out. At this moment, the heavenly demon's body was like a leaky sieve. It was desperately trying to squeeze out those nearly solid cyan sword aura. This time, it was not the body formed by the heavenly demon aura that was destroyed. Instead, it was the real body of the heavenly demon that was destroyed. The heavenly demon's injuries were so serious that it was shocking to see. Such a clean and neat result was not only beyond the heavenly demon's expectations, but also beyond Tan Tan's expectations. This result was seriously too inconceivable, wasn't it? The two of them had been fighting for their lives here for so long and still could not do anything to the other party. Yet, this little one had attacked without any warning and instantly broke the stalemate, even severely injuring the heavenly demon. What kind of situation was this? In terms of cultivation alone, it seemed like even 10 Chu Yangs added together would not be a match for the current heavenly demon. But the heavenly demon was seriously too careless. He actually grabbed Chu Yang's sword with his bare hands. He wanted to kill Chu Yang with a single strike like how he dealt with Guigu. But the heavenly demon didn't think so. Chu Yang's sword was no ordinary sword. It was the legendary Calamity sword. Even in the heavenly imperial court, it was definitely the #1 peerless divine sword. In fact, it was not just in the heavenly imperial court. Even if one surveyed the world and the universe, it was very difficult to find a divine sword that was stronger than this Calamity sword. because the creator of this sword was a super mighty person who was almost above everything in the world. But then again, if it was just the Calamity Sword alone, even if the heavenly demon was careless, he definitely wouldn't be severely injured. Once the sword aura entered his body, it would be expelled by the demonic aura. At most, he would only suffer some superficial injuries and might not affect the overall situation. But other than the Calamity Sword, Chu Yang also had the Heaven Overarching Divine Technique. He unleashed the Heaven Overarching Divine Technique's cultivation to the maximum in one go. All of it turned into sword aura. Even if the heavenly demon was at his peak, he wouldn't be able to withstand having his meridians explode like this, much less now when his cultivation was less than a tenth of it. Not to mention that the heavenly demon didn't know that Chu Yang was the Calamity Sword Master at all. Even if he was, he would still have to take this loss. Because he didn't know what the words Calamity Sword Master represented at all. Tan Tan couldn't help but rub his eyes. He murmured, "I'm not dreaming. I must be dreaming. Otherwise, how could there be such a powerful sword? How could there be such a terrifying sword?" Ah! The heavenly demon screamed miserably. He couldn't believe the extreme pain in his body. His eyes were wide open in shock. Finally, his right hand grabbed at Chu Yang fiercely. He screamed, "Little, how dare you? You won't have a good death." His hand grabbed at Chu Yang fiercely. Chu Yang had unleashed all the strength in his body. So, it was difficult for him to even move a finger. He could only fly forward due to the inertia. He could only look on helplessly as the heavenly demon palm came towards him at lightning speed. However, he was powerless to do anything. Tan Tan shouted, "Be careful." He rushed forward fiercely, but it was obviously too late. "Chu Yang!" Tan Tan's eyes opened wide, and he madly shouted. He felt as if his heart was being cut by a knife. If it wasn't for ZJ, would Chu Yang have to do this? It was ZJ's cry for help that Chu Yang came from thousands of miles away. He didn't even take a breath and went straight into the battle. He went all out the moment he attacked. Now, he was in a situation where his life was at stake. However, ZJ wanted to save him, but he couldn't. The brother who had come to save ZJ had succeeded in saving ZJ, but ZJ had died. At this moment, Tan Tan almost wanted to end ZJ's life with ZJ. The regret and guilt in his heart had almost drowned his mind. Just at this critical moment, inside Chu Yang's body, there was a cold snort, and a figure suddenly rushed out of Chu Yang's body. Two withered hands firmly grabbed the heavenly demon's right hand. The figure gradually solidified. It was a withered figure with a vague face. His eyes were like that of an old farmer who had gone through the vicissitudes of life. They were full of turbidity. However, that pair of eyes stared at the heavenly demon and shouted, "Heavenly demon! Don't be so savage." To me. It was the sword spirit. The sword spirit's voice was still echoing. He opened his mouth and spat out an unusually blazing flame with a puff sound. The heavenly demon screamed as if it had seen a ghost. "Ah, Nirvana flame. Damn it, damn it, damn it." That flame rushed over. The heavenly demon's right hand, which was restrained by the sword spirit, immediately caught on fire and started to burn. However, that hand also fiercely clashed with the sword spirit's hand. Boundless demonic energy and endless destructive power also erupted at the same time. The sword spirit's cultivation grew along with the Tribulation Sword Master's cultivation. Although it wasn't weak at the moment, it was limited by the Tribulation Sword Master's cultivation. Therefore, the sword spirit's current strength was only one level above the peak of the middle grade level. Facing the heavenly demon's all-out attack, the sword spirit couldn't bear it at the moment. The sword spirit's body trembled violently. Then he coughed. His body, which was gradually solidifying, faded away and disappeared completely. However, the heavenly demon screamed in agony. The cultivation that he had forcibly stimulated previously was finally unable to continue at this point. But he had also suffered fatal injuries. His left hand had been destroyed by Chu Yang, and his right hand had also been burned by this guy who had inexplicably rushed out of Chu Yang's body. Furthermore, that fella's strange phoenix True Qi had once again made things worse on top of Zhang's heavy injuries, causing his injuries to become even more severe. That damn nirvana flame was still in Chu Yang's hand and it was still burning gracefully. The flame flickered again and again, and again and again. The new and old injuries were acting up at the same time. The heavenly demon really wanted to die at this moment. More importantly, he was really about to die. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.